if you were to isolate even the top 6 of the ANC and individually ask them, what do you think is the mission of the ANC, one by one, you're going to listen to 6 different opinions. The ANC is losing.
Who is it losing
so
to?
They will lose to community organizations and sometimes the DA. The people are saying anything else but the ANC.
What do you think of their president, of the president of the ANC, the president of the country?
It doesn't exist. Ramaphosa doesn't exist. He's not honest as well. So he's a puppet of the establishment.
King David Studio Podcast.
I'm with Nico in the studio today. You know, I don't introduce my guests because they are known. Their profile is big enough. How are you, sir?
No, I'm fine. And how are you? And want to congratulate you for the Mashabela creatives and the studios here. We just took a walk now.
Yeah.
I think it's actually one of the most inspiring initiatives, particularly for this age.
Yeah.
Because this form of communication is actually the most important one. It has got much more bigger impact than any other form because it provides a deeper detail of what people have to talk about. It's actually a diversion. It's a move from the type of media which only focuses on snippets and few issues without the exact details of just what happened. So well done on the
Thank you.
On the progress thus far. And I'm sure there's a long road ahead of you.
Yeah, it's not easy. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I'm glad you noticed that these type of platforms work.
Yes.
Because I didn't want to do the political interviews.
Yeah.
And then I realized something, that politicians don't get enough time.
Yes.
And even when you're standing at a stadium and you're delivering a manifesto,
yes,
there's something about that setting that doesn't get people to quite absorb it.
Yeah.
Than here when it's quietly.
Also, the projection and the choice of words that you use when you are speaking in a stadium has to be different to what you would say if you were to give a much more contextual and conceptual detail of what do you mean by all these things that you make commitments or promises on. So it's a different setting altogether. I think
and they can't ask you questions.
There has to be, there can't be questions. There has to be a proper combination of usage of all these platforms so that everything else that we say comes out with absolute clarity.
Wow. Thank you for coming. We're recording this on a Sunday. Cadres are working. You guys are working. How's the campaign trail? How is that going?
It's so far so good. I think we're gaining proper traction in terms of what is expected. I think the most important thing for any election campaign is presence in all the voting districts. So if you are not present as a political party in all the voting districts, you won't have any impact. That is why in South Africa, there is only 3 political parties that are national parties. Like the ANC is the DA and the Economic Freedom Fighters. The rest are regional parties. Like they don't get to find expression and representation in all the corners of South Africa. So impact is measured by your presence in all the voting districts, and you've got upward of 23,000 voting districts in South Africa.
That's a lot, and you are represented
the EFF
everywhere.
Is there. We are there in all the VDs. So our election strategy was to have something we call the Voting District Elections Task Forces. So in each and every VD of the 23,000, we've got a minimum of 20 volunteers who do door-to-door and speak to voters and get that captured at sub-regional level, and then the region processes it and then takes it to the province. And every Monday, the Central Elections Task Force meets to review the submissions that are coming from all the VDs.
Yes.
So that is how our election strategy has been thus far, and we are fairly satisfied that we are present in all the VDs. We just have to have the necessary impact when we go to the 29th of May, when we are going to just demonstrate what we're capable of.
What is your projection, your performance? How many seats do you get in the last elections?
We are currently 44 in the National Assembly. In the National Council of Provinces, we have got 9 delegates to the National Council of Provinces who represent the EFF.
Pretty good.
But of course, they're sent in by their provinces
of course,
in terms of the whole process. So in total, the people who are in the national parliament sphere or legislative sphere, it's 53 for the economic freedom fighters. And then we've got 50 members of the provincial legislatures, different numbers in different provinces.
Jeez.
And then we've got, of course, like 1,290 councillors
across the country.
There are very few municipalities where we're not represented. You can actually finish both hands counting the ones which were represented. And remember, South Africa has got upward of 257 municipalities.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
What do you anticipate? That those who say you won't do so well?
We are going to be at the center of the political shift that is going to occur after the 29th of May 2024. So we, of course, are contesting these elections with the aim of winning.
Of course.
We are convinced that if we speak to majority of voters, if we speak to all the voters, majority will vote for the EFF. But we then, of course, open up that if we do not win, I don't think that our growth will be less than 100% as compared to the 2019 general elections. So we're guaranteed that. And the consequence of us growing with that quantum will mean that there's no outright winner in South Africa's politics.
So your growth will take from someone.
Look, the reality, if you read closely some of the electoral trends that have been happening since we were formed as the EFF, is that our growth happens at the expense of the ruling party, which is the African National Congress. And it's good because, by the way, when we were founded in 2013, we did not say we were going to kill the ANC. We made an observation that the ANC is dying a natural death.
Okay.
And that if there is no formation of a radical left formation, which is going to propagate and speak on behalf of the people, political power is going to shift rightward to right-wing forces and might even go into the white reactionary right-wingers who will reclaim this country and reintroduce more or less the conditions that obtained prior 1994. Then we say that the EFF is then formed as a radical militant economic emancipation movement, which is going to fight for the liberation of our people, through liberation, in terms of what is required. So that is what we anticipate, that from 2024 onwards, the ANC will gradually be moving out of political power and until they are completely out. But it's a natural process.
But any natural
which cannot be helped by anyone. Like, no one will risk that.
I was about to ask: is it rescuable, this natural process?
It's not. I think there's been so many aspects that got to confuse the ANC. It has been unable to define a common vision and mission post-1994. So what then got to happen is that whoever is a sitting president tends to over-dominate what is the policy focus and agenda and mission of the entire ANC. So there's no clarity. There is no clarity of what they are fighting for. They tried to conceptualize something called a national democratic society. They debated whether the national democratic revolution is still on track and whether it must lead to socialism, of what should happen to it. So they keep on shifting goalposts. So if you were to isolate even the top six of the ANC and individually ask them, what do you think is the mission of the ANC, one by one, you're going to listen to six different opinions and stories. Yes. So there is no clarity of what the commonly stand for. So they've got different, and that then opens up space for opportunists and different elements who then climb onto the wagon for personal self-enrichment purposes instead of a common perspective and agenda. So now, and then the EFF is actually different because we say that at the center of our program is the 7 non-negotiable cardinal pillars, which is expropriation of land without compensation for equal redistribution, nationalization of mines, banks, and other strategic sectors of the economy without, and then for redistribution as well, much more meaningfully. And then we then say massive protected industrial expansion with the aim of creating millions of jobs. And we can go into town in terms of what that means. Yes. Then we then speak about building state capacity with the aim of abolishing tenders. That is what the cardinal pillar says. And then there's a pillar that speaks about provision of fee-free education, healthcare, and sanitation. And then there's a pillar that speaks to development of the African economy.
Yeah.
And it also says that we must actually advocate for a move from reconciliation to justice. And then the last pillar speaks to an open, accountable, and corrupt-free government. And we say those are non-negotiable in terms of what we stand for. And then additional to that, by the way, in the founding manifesto of the EFF, we also then bring in complementary pillars that we stand for. So like every member of the EFF
gets it,
get a sense of what we stand for.
Yeah.
And added to that, we then say that because we are an organization that represents the interest of the working class, we can't utilize just common sense to analyze society from time to time. We need ideological tools of analysis and guide to action. Like we need a telescope to understand how
empirical evidence.
And how do we deal with that. Then that is why we then say that our ideological inclination is Marxist, Leninist, and Fanunian as a way of how we get to assess society. So there is absolutely no way that in the EFF we can say different things as to what we stand for. But in the former liberation movement, there's confusion, and that is what is leading to their permanent, inevitable dwindle into insignificance. They will be completely out. Like even if the EFF did not exist, by the way, they were going to be out by themselves. I mean, like there are areas I can tell you where,
for example,
where like there are areas where the ANC is dramatically losing support. Like in Nguba Temba and Craddock, there's a Middleburg town in the Eastern Cape. There's Middleburg, of course, in Mpumalanga, but there's Middleburg as well.
Of course, yes, in the Eastern Cape.
In the Eastern Cape. And then in Blue Crane. Like Blue Crane, it's a very small municipality. Like there's a place called Cook House there.
Okay.
And the ANC, the EFF has not yet gained serious traction there. Even in Kokama and Koha, in many other municipalities, the EFF has not yet gained traction.
But are you saying
the ANC is losing?
Who is it losing
so
to?
They will lose to community organizations and sometimes the DA. So whoever is there, the people are saying anything else but the ANC. Like they get to give them that responsibility. Like you'll know that when the ANC was taken out of power as well, in Tabazimbi, in Mitsimahulu, in Mudumulu Muhopong, and it was mostly the residents' associations that played a far much more leading role in displacing them, because majority, if not all of our people are saying this liberation movement is not liberatory. It's not bringing about the liberation that it promised to our people. So that is what is happening. Then that's why the formation of the EFF was not to kill the ANC, was through an observation that the ANC is dying a natural death, and that we need to constitute a revolutionary, a working class party which is going to defend the interest of our people and must be framed within a sound ideological perspective, which we say is Marxist, Leninist, Fanunian, but also must embrace Pan-Africanism, because we can't go anywhere without Pan-Africanism.
Do you know, preparing for this interview, I came across a study that says what the EFF is doing inevitably influences ANC decisions. 2017,
yes,
and it's a study in the same school, I think, where you studied your master's Masters of Science that you just completed.
Yeah,
where there's a Ngube, I think it's a lady that did a study on this very phenomenon, that the things that you speak of as EFF eventually gets implemented or adopted by the ANC. And I guess it answers that very question that if you ask 6 different ANC leaders, they would give you 6 different answers because they are not standing straight on a particular line. Expand on that.
No, look, I think perhaps the other thing which we should say is that the journey of what we call the economic freedom struggle, or the generation of economic freedom fighters, we don't claim and will never claim that we invented it with the formation of the EFF. So we conceptualized the struggle of our generation as a struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. And the basis of that was, of course, an inspiration of the founding generation of the Congress Youth League in the 1940s, whose struggle, clarion call was freedom in our lifetime. So when the Congress Youth League was founded in 1944 by Anton Muziwake Lambede, Mxolisi Majumbosi, A.P. Mda, Robert Magalise Sobukwe, Congress Mbata, Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, all of those. They said freedom in our lifetime. And then they said that we're going to do everything humanly possible to achieve freedom. And coincidentally, the generation that said freedom in our lifetime is the one that led South Africa into their political freedom in 1994. It's the same generation. Like, although there were so many dynamics that got to happen, like inclusive of some dying suspicious, like Anton Lembede, Robert Sobukwe charting a different path and everything else, which was actually a much more revolutionary path which he had taken. The Pan-Africanist route, and being isolated by the apartheid government because they were much more fearful of him. But that generation is the one that led South Africa into the political freedom. Then ourselves, we then got to say, and I'm going to come back to that point, we then got to say, we are now a generation of economic freedom in our lifetime. And we literally were taking the baton from that generation because in between, there are times where a generation fails to recognize or identify its mission. So actually, in the founding manifesto of the EFF, the first sentence there is a quote from Frantz Fanon, which says that each generation must recognize and identify its mission and must fulfill it or betray it. But there are generations, by the way, which just go on. And when you try to think what exactly did they stand for, you can't be able to identify there's the most of the younger generations that came post-1994. They didn't have a mission to fight for. They were just saying, defend the gains of democracy, seize the opportunities of democracy.
It made sense though at the time.
Yeah. But it was not a transformative, revolutionary mission to say, this is what we are in pursuit of. Then ourselves who then came to say that from this, even you can check the ANC weekly congresses before us, the Congress themes were defending the gains of democracy, seizing the opportunities of youth development, all of those things. Then ourselves we said, no, there's actually no freedom here in this country.
Because freedom is not defined correctly.
Yeah, we said there is no freedom. There is no real emancipation because this political power which we have is not translating into meaningful freedom. We need to now fight for economic freedom in our lifetime. But then that generation, we had actually a huge impact, like unprecedented levels of ideological and political influence over the entire liberation movement and its formations. Whether it's COSATU, SACP, and all the affiliates of COSATU and Contralesa and all of those organizations.
They bought
and the ANC. Like, if you were to check just what were the resolutions of the ANC in the 2011 National General Council, due to the influence of the ANC, like literally everything that we're saying must happen, where it was happening, even on the land question, on nationalization of mines and everything else. That is what got us to be banished from the former liberation movement. But we had already conceptualized the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. And then, of course, there are those who remained in the ANC who got to continue to push for the economic freedom in our lifetimes. In the 2017 conference of the ANC, a substantial number of the economic freedom in our lifetime demands found themselves into the resolutions of
Do you know why? You were not in the ANC.
Who were not, the ideological wave continued to have the influence, but also because the EFF was now outside, like pushing much more fervently the issues of creation of a state bank, nationalization of the Reserve Bank, expropriation of land without compensation. And if you read the ANC resolutions from 2017,
that's what they say.
Exactly like that. Actually,
even free education.
Yeah, even on free education.
Yeah.
They even actually on state bank, they say that this must be done as soon as possible. Like, but they did not have the leadership which was courageous enough to could implement their own resolutions. Those who were elected, Cyril Ramaphosa and them, they went to.
It's the CR17. What is that?
That board conference, where the establishment pumped in a lot of money, billions of rands.
Is that what happened? Has it ever been proven that theory? No, or there's enough? No.
In our case, it does not. We know this for a fact. And Cyril Ramaphosa and them, they know that. We know that that conference was bought.
Jeez, with billions.
And billions of rands were channeled to. There's a guy who operates those things there who works with Cyril, and then they were basically, they bought that conference.
Sure.
They used money to buy delegates, and I'm sure a delegate would be like 100,000. And the only thing, the only thing is required for me is to just vote for a person.
But it's a
not
secret
like
vote though, as well. Yeah. Doesn't that complicate things?
It does have huge influence, by the way. Like
that 100,000.
There is actually a lot of proper theoretical basis and research projects that illustrate how money can influence electoral choices in a huge way.
Wow.
So. And that leave for intra-party elections. Even national elections can be influenced by money in a huge way.
How do you do that? Because you're now influencing me to vote. Like, you can't give me 100,000 rands to vote for you.
So do you know the manner in which you can package your messaging and the number of billboards, and all of those that you can reproduce, the television adverts, all those things, but also like what you can give to volunteers and everything else there can have huge impact. I can tell you now that, you see, the Oppenheimers are not foolish when they are pumping a lot of money to the political parties which they puppet master and control. It's because they know that money influences politics. Like, I mean, like if you have got all the money and you know how to utilize it in electoral politics, you can win elections with Zaka.
Nothing else.
Like, yeah.
Are you saying? Are you saying
it influences? Do you know? I'll give you an example. Actually, when we were still in the ANC Youth League, right? So whenever there were by-elections, they will take mostly all those of us were in head office, and then we went to a by-election in a municipality called T. Waterskloof in Overbeek in the Western Cape. And then we did door-to-door, like proper organizers, like sit in the office, the regional office there, do the map and count the number of streets, how many people stay there, go door-to-door, thorough. And we're contesting against the DA there. That time, like for by-elections. The DA is nowhere. There's no door-to-door. Elections are on a Wednesday. On a Monday, some white guy comes with a white Z2 BMW.
Okay.
And then he opened the booth there with Zaka.
And gives people.
And then he says people who want to volunteer are going to be paid 200 rand per week.
Jeez.
And then he distributed the money and everything else. You want that what? Like,
with money?
With money. Just like that.
Even if the vote is secret.
Yeah. He won it. And do you know what actually got to happen? Because he came on a Monday and then on Tuesday, when we go to the people then who have now received the 200 rands, then they say, it's the same with you as ANC people now. What are you going to do for us? Because even if we vote for you, we're still going to remain here in the informal settlements.
Okay, nothing changes.
Yeah, nothing changes. Like this 200 rand which we're given, at least there's something we benefited out of this. So we're going to honor our word to that person who gave us.
At least.
Yeah, because there's at least some 200 rand which we received in terms of.
That's crazy.
So Cyril Ramaphosa bought the ANC conference. I'm not sure if the other side did not use money as well. But I know, as a matter of fact, that the 2017 grouping. But the issue which we're highlighting is that the reason why the 2017 conference spoke to a lot of the economic freedom in our lifetime demands and resolutions is because the generation that we led
was still
was still there, and they were very influential.
Your journey into politics is a strange but interesting one. You came through other ranks, so to speak, like SACP and COSATU.
Yeah.
Am I correct in saying for you to end up in the ANC?
Yeah. My political consciousness and awareness, they got to be ignited far much earlier in my life. I always avoid talking about this.
Well, let's go a little bit. But say as much as you can.
I was actually remembering there's a guy who used to teach us in primary school. Like, I think his surname is Tlungwane because I forgot his name. But he was...
teachers, we know them by...
yeah.
Enough.
Teacher Tlungwane.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when I was in standard 3, so I easily remember which year I was in standard 3 because 1993 I was standard 3, 1994.
Oh, so for you it's easy to trace it.
To trace it, yeah. So he then got us to act in a school drama, like sketch, which was highly political. And most of the times, the sketches or these dramas, the school dramas where people act, were mostly people acting the Bible and everything else. And then he came to the primary school that I went to, Mahonisi Primary School. And then he created a political drama, and which was having characters like Mandela, but you will call it Comrade Ndelama.
Oh.
Yeah, and then...
That's a slight
change.
Yes.
And then he would make us to memorize what would be the speeches that will be said. And we would, of course, memorize, but not knowing what some of those things say. So I don't... There will be a part of Comrade Ndelama will be addressing and say, comrades, friends, and confidence. We are here today not to preach violence, but to preach the message of peace. Let us take our spears and assegais and throw them into the ocean.
You're a kid.
And at that time, we got to... and for some reason, I knew the scripts of all the people who were acting there. So even when they would forget, I'll always be the one to remind them that no.
That's what you say.
So there would be, in the drama there would be a detlag as well, but you will call it differently as well and everything. As well say, fellow white men, bear in mind that the color of our skin is white and it is not black. We are specifically created by God. Let us exploit and oppress them for heaven's sake, right? But we did not even know what oppress means or exploit means. But the memory was there that then when time progresses, you begin to appreciate that these are the politics. Then when I went to high school, I went standard 6, 1996. I got involved in student politics far much earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what was driving you? What was driving you?
I think it was just the conditions. I for instance, do you know when the South African Schools Act banned corporal punishment? A lot of high schools continued with corporal punishment.
Of course, because you couldn't. They
couldn't. It couldn't be monitored. Yeah. So myself, because my father used to be in the school governing body, so I had a copy of the South African Schools Act, which outlawed corporal punishment. So I used to refuse.
You can't hit.
Yeah, I used to refuse.
And I know I have evidence.
I never, for the entirety of my high school years, even when they were beating everyone else there, I never surrendered my hand to be beaten for any reason.
Yeah, because you knew better.
Yeah, I said no. And then later on, I got to be joined by others and everything else. They're like, who said no, we can't be beaten as well.
Did you, at the time, see your life in politics, or it was something else?
Yeah, for some reason, I knew that I'll play a role in activism, because even those high school activities that we're doing were largely influenced by political interest and awareness. Like, I know I possibly said in 1998, if not 1999, when I read somewhere that David Masondo, who comes from Bungeni village, which is where I come from, that side there of Malamlele,
Yes,
is an SRC president at Wits University, right? Then I was like, even myself, when I go to Wits University, I'm going to be SRC president.
You already had ambition.
Yeah, and that was before I was even in matric, and I even forgot about what I had said, because I later on became SRC president at Wits. And then some guy I was in high school with, he came to my office at the SRC office and said that, you once said when we were in high school that you're going to be SRC president at Wits. Wow. How did you know?
Jeez.
So that is...
was it something at home, in your household, that also motivated the
look, my family was not overtly politically involved in everything else, but politically conscious.
Okay.
Fully aware of... and also I would think, as compared to other households in the villages, we had access to some reading material far much earlier in our household.
Who was bringing that?
My father.
Yeah.
My father, he would struggle to get anything else, but he would buy a newspaper or buy something. He
struggled to get a pair of shoes.
But the reading stuff, we always got to be kept abreast of what is happening everywhere. So he fervently was always reading. And the village which we grew up in is extremely basic and rudimentary. I remember the other time I was talking, I think I was saying to the president of the EFF that, do you know that in the village where I come from, even now, I think 99% of the households still use pit toilets.
What?
Yeah. And
electricity, I know electricity only arrived 2010 or something.
Yeah.
I read something somewhere where you said.
But now, I'm talking now. With this, and water is still fetched from the communal taps.
Don't you feel some?
And it was worse then. They maybe with electricity, I don't know, but. And then the water is not it's not guaranteed that it's going to come out of the communal tap. There are those, of course, who have dug boreholes.
Of course, yeah.
And then there are those who have built septic tanks. But it's still a rudimentary...
But don't you feel, being such a senior politician, that maybe you should plow back? Don't you feel the responsibility?
Do you know what the role I've been playing with the schools... that the villages where I come from. So I've adopted the high schools there and provide a very substantial academic support to the high schools. I know that the high school, the first time when I adopted the school, their pass rate was just above 50%. And then after we did the academic interventions, it went upward of 80%. And we're actually 100% pass rate on in maths literacy, in English, and a variety of other courses.
Yeah.
Because of the program that we're supporting. And then, of course, I'll tell you what happened later on. I then later on stopped the support to the high school because, and I didn't want to get involved with village school issues.
Village politics.
Yeah, the village politics. Then there's a SATU member who's an ANC councillor, full-time ANC councillor. He's a teacher. Then there's contestation for school principal. There's an incumbent acting principal whom we work very well together to support the students, right? And we even agreed that the top 5, top 10 students will give them laptops. We physically get to find them spaces in universities. Then there's this ANC councillor who is Satu. It's a full-time councillor. It's an ANC activist.
Yeah.
He applies to be a school principal. And the incumbent one who's doing the school principal work applies as well. The Department of Education appoints the ANC councillor.
Mm-hmm.
And
isn't it on merit though?
It was not on merit.
You showed that person didn't qualify.
It wasn't. It was the most irrational thing. I know because I got to interact with also the traditional leadership from the village there. They were saying it doesn't make sense. I hear that things could have changed now, but there was a time when I was in the village there. So I literally wanted to check what is happening in the village. Then I went to a place which is a shebeen, like a drinking spot.
Because that's where you'll hear stories.
Yeah. This is where you get to know what is happening. And I saw him in the car with the kids who go to the school that...
this principal?
Yeah.
This Satu...
Yeah, the Satu ANC council. Like, in the car with the kids, like the girls who literally go to the school which he goes to. Then I was like, how do you...
even do that?
Yeah.
Kids shouldn't be next to a park.
And I was like, this is... it's something else.
Is that when you decided just before not to support the school?
So then when he was there and then everything else, then the relations with the school and everything else, they like deteriorated because also part of what they actively do that side to suppress the EFF, they literally go around spreading lies and those things of the scaremongering of villages that they're going to cancel your social grants, and all of those things and everything else. They play under belt because they are supposed to be influential members of the community and everything else. So that is one of the things which I was like, this guy, like it's something else. And actually at some stage I was like, maybe I must take up this battle. Like I was like, maybe it will resolve itself. But I got a report now from the chairperson of the school governing body who said that the mistake that we made about that school principal has now been corrected because he has left.
Okay.
So there's an acting principal. So let's please revive all the support programs that we have had and everything else.
What type of interventions were you putting in place?
So
at the time?
there's something which I think should be done in all the schools. So there is online educational content for all the subjects as well, like video teachings. So the problem of South Africa's education system is mostly teaching. Majority of our teachers can't explain coherently just what is in the textbooks. So we'll literally get the top-end educational content, which is on video, and buy overhead projectors and computers and everything else, and then go and teach the students with the external teachers who
on video,
and then we'll give them study guides and everything else there. And that changed the situation in a huge way.
Yeah,
in a huge way, because the reality is that, and not in a way that must be. Majority of the teachers can properly explain
what they are reading, what they are teaching,
and a larger number of them, if they were to be assessed on the subjects that they are teaching, I doubt if they would get the maximal returns.
Okay,
because remember, if
they would fail their own class.
If you are a teacher, mathematics, and you're going to write a mathematics paper, at least you must get 80-90% because you're teaching that. Like, I don't know why we don't have a mechanism of reassessment of teachers. It should be looked into in the future. Yes, you qualified as a teacher and everything else, but when trends continue to change,
are you moving?
Yeah. Let's reassess. Like even the ones who are teaching the languages, they must be reassessed.
Interesting.
Like everyone else must be. I'm sure there can be a role which teachers can play in the entire schooling system, but I think the technology is advanced enough now could teach all the 14 million kids through the best teachers in the country.
My worry is you're taking teachers' jobs.
No.
I'm saying we can find popular.
We can find a role. We can find a role like in the whole schooling system.
Yeah.
As to what role do they play and everything else they like.
Ensure that
Like,
the teaching is there.
Yeah. I've been to high school where a teacher will be stuck in the middle of a mathematics formula and proper struggle to conclude. And but if you get the best of the teachers to do so, then you're guaranteed that you will have the maximal returns. And I know this because I've seen it, and I didn't do it in only one high school, because I did it with George Sonto High School, which is the school from Mawanase village. I did it with Mpambo High School, which is the other high school next door to where we come from, and Shigamane High School, and then Sherlel High School in Mavambe village. So I know that model works if you were to roll it out much more aggressively to help everyone.
Do you know something I've learned about you, and I guess we know it, and we've always known it. Your attachment to education is very, very key in your character, in your person. You consider it as important.
Yeah.
What drives that, though, in your... Is it your upbringing? Did something happen to you that makes you pursue? And we'll talk about your degree, which you just got, master's. You just got a few days ago.
Yeah.
But
conferred with the MSc as a Master of Science.
Yes. Now, like a few days ago. But what drives the desire for more knowledge? That is, it's so. When someone saw you walk in, they wouldn't think so.
Yeah. I've always had these. Strong passion to learn something every day. Like, actually, I was saying to my daughter now, we're driving this side, that so she's just turned 13, that I said to her that a good thing is that she said she wants to go and buy books first in exclusive books.
Oh, is that what you sent me a text saying I'm running a little late? Yeah. You had to go past. Because I saw she walked in with a brand new book.
Yeah. Then I was saying to her that far much earlier in life, like there will be a time where I'll say that I can't finish a day without learning something new. Like, even if it's just one issue, like one thing new, like if it's either even it's one word,
one new big word.
Yeah, like so I made that commitment to, and then I think I've told that story like before, because like in the high schools that we went to, there was no libraries, there were no computers, like there was no electricity.
Most schools are still the same.
Yeah, they're still the same. Yeah. Like there was nothing. Like we didn't have as much access to information. So then when I got admitted to Wits University, I'm telling you, like I had this passion. I was like, these people, they don't know me. I'm going to read all those books, even.
I like how you said they don't know me.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to read all those books. I said, I know I'm enrolled for this course and project, but I'm going to even read the ones of engineering and medicine as long as they are there. Then I realized that books are way too many. I was extremely very shocked.
You're ambitious.
I was when I went to the library for the first time, I was so shocked.
Wow.
Like that. I've never seen so many books ever in my life.
Jeez.
There were way too many, like all passages and passages. It's many books. And I realized that that ambition of reading everything is not practical.
It was a childlike, innocent.
Yeah, I was like, it's not practical.
Yeah.
Let's then get to be mainstream and look into. But I learned very fast as well, because from not knowing basic concepts like my first day in university, by the second year, like I was very coherent. I can I think one day maybe when I start publishing books, I can even publish the things which I wrote in my first year. Like,
what?
And both the academic stuff and the political work which like I would do, because I became branch secretary of SASCO in my first year and then chairperson in the next day. So I would.
Jeez, you moved fast.
I moved very fast.
For a village boy.
Yeah. And then, so I would write an organizational report. I still have a copy of the organizational report. Even the SRC election strategy of how to win SRC elections, I still have those.
Jeez. Did you see yourself improve? Did you see yourself better and better?
Yeah.
But what would you attribute that improvement to? Is it the reading that you referred to?
Yeah, it's the intense reading, but also getting to engage with practical work as well. Because we'll interact with virtually all spheres. Like, would listen to a lot of political engagements and everything else.
Yeah.
And I actually, for some reason, I thought that is how everyone else should be. But later on, when we got to participate in the national politics of SASCO and Young Communist League and the ANC Youth League, and sometimes I'll be like, but how do some of these people lead at national level? Because they don't seem to know a lot or know anything that is coherent.
Is it still the same now?
Yeah. It's actually, I think it's getting worse. It's getting worse because I listen a lot to different people. Like I listen to these political parties.
We've been hosting many.
Yes, I listen to what they say, right, and everything else there, and you pick up that with mostly the ANC and ANC Youth League guys, it's worrying levels of comprehension of the details of anything. Like they just phrase mongering, like, and I mean, we can retrieve what we used to say and coherently so. Like when we came with nationalization of mines, we wrote a very comprehensive document. Like anyone can read it now. It's the most clearest of perspectives. Yeah. Like we wrote the clarion call to economic freedom fighters. Like when we got to conceptualize the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime, cogent, clear, something which you can still own up to. Yeah. You can't blame your youthfulness that we're too young to could say this. That
you were too young and radical.
Yeah, like but you can still own up to. But I don't pick that up from the current generation. I just hear phrase mongering and throwing in of concepts, which majority of times they do not understand, and that is it's a cause for concern because it's not like the adults know anything. Like,
but wasn't there an era within the ANC, and let me say within activism as a whole, where research and writing of documents and those robust debates was actually part and a very key part of politics? Surely there was that generation.
Yeah, existed. But now there isn't. Like now you don't get to. You don't get to pick up what exactly is being said. Like, there is no clear mission which is being projected or defended and everything else. The majority of these guys, they just want to be in the system. They want to eat. They want to get rich or die trying.
At least one of the two.
Like, yeah, that is the whole criteria. You don't pick up any coherent there. And that is why the ANC will not live for a very long time. Because remember, once they start to get out of power, they're going to lose relevance altogether. I mean, the illustrations of that are everywhere. Like, checking the Western Cape, like, they're almost non-existent. Once you go in the 20s, you're going.
You'll never recover.
Yeah, you'll never recover. Yeah. Like, in the same direction they're going to take in KwaZulu-Natal. And here in Gauteng as well, unfortunately. And there's no inspiration for anyone else to associate with them. So that is what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your first degree? What is your junior degree?
So when I arrived at WITS, I did BA Law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Legal ambitions or?
No. I was trying to make the parents comfortable because I purposefully wanted to study like the social sciences.
Okay.
And I was saying, but what is this thing all about of social sciences? What are you going to do with it? Then I was like,
what job are you going to get?
Yeah.
That's what the parents
Then I added the law component, but I was not so pleased with the law component. Like then I dropped the law courses and then focused on the social sciences and added economics.
Okay.
So I then did my first degree. It was like It was a BA degree. I graduated when I was immediately just after I became SRC president, 22.
Okay. Did you immediately go into postgrad?
No.
Yeah.
I actually got to register later for an honors degree. And then I wrote an interesting dissertation of the honors degree, which I was doing a comparative study of RDP and GEAR, so like the Reconstruction and Development Program. And
you were questioning them, begging.
Yeah.
Yes.
And was able to actually design proper differences as to, because that time the discourse was mostly the Trevor Manuel discourse and all of those neoliberals. They were saying GEAR is a continuation of the RDP.
Yes.
Then I said, no, maybe we need an academic study to show the differences, particularly in terms of the ideological underpinnings.
Yeah.
And then after that, then went to work.
Is it these are the COSATU days?
Yeah.
Yes.
But that transition for me was the most important transition.
Like,
from academia, like being a student activist. In student activism, I grew became SRC president and then was elected to the National Executive Committee of SASCO. So in that period, there was a process of merging the SAU SRC and SATSU. SATSU was called the South African Technicon Students Union.
Oh, yes, because there was there were Technicons at the time.
There were Technicons. So we're then, as student activists, as mostly SRCs that time, were then assigned to merge the two organizations to form the South African Union of Students. So I became the national coordinator of that process.
Jeez.
Like literally typed the constitution. I presented the constitution of South in the founding conference. Like, this is how and we're still like relatively young. And
you were
actually,
a kid.
yeah, but and that time is my final year when I'm an SRC
junior degree.
Yes, for the junior degree. Yeah, and I had to go to different areas to consult on the South Constitution. Some of the areas I got to discover for the first time during that time. Like, for instance, when I went to East London for the first time, no one had told me that there's a place called East London, which is coastal.
And beautiful.
Yeah, and beautiful. Then I get to the airport, they say, you're going to East London. I'm like, East London? No problem. Then I'm going to meet the SRCs of Eastern Cape. Then go to East London. There's even an ocean in East London. Then I got there, the transport takes me to do the consultations and everything else.
Wow.
But also the other thing which got to happen as well when I was SRC president, like I said, I grew like almost fully. There was something called the Accelerated and Shared Growth Initiative of South Africa as GISA, right? When they introduced that as a policy framework, they then created an institution called the Joint Initiative on Priority Skills Acquisition, GIPSA.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So if you go to the internet or Google, you can check GIPSA. If you say GIPSA report PDF, you can actually retrieve a lot of those reports.
Yeah.
So then they put up that GIPSA, which was supposed to focus on skills prioritization. Then I was identified to represent students in the committee, which was chaired by a deputy president of the Republic at that time. I think it was Pumzile.
That era.
That era, yes.
Yes. Because she was in for a short period, but she was there. Yeah.
Yes. And then, so I was sitting in a committee which was chaired by the deputy president of the Republic, had 10 ministers.
What? You were probably 20, 21.
Yeah, 21, yeah. And had CEOs of major companies, Jaco Maria of Standard Bank, Bobby Godsell of Anglo Gold Ashanti, Vincent Mapai, and all of those things. Malusi Kegan was, in terms of age, was the one who was closer to me, but he was far much older even.
Yeah, by probably 15 years.
Yeah, because he was the CEO of Umsombombo Youth Fund.
I remember, yes. Yeah. That became NYDA later on.
And even in those platforms, because I had developed something far much earlier in life that I can't go to a meeting and not say anything. So even in there, and we meet in Mahlambanlovu, in the cabinet chambers, and we meet in 10 Hayes as well, in Cape Town. Like, then they organize a chauffeur to come and fetch you in the university. You go, you fly, you are fetched at the airport in Cape Town.
Aren't you overwhelmed by all this?
I wasn't actually.
Yes.
I
You felt right at home.
No, I didn't have panic at all, because also remember when you're SRC president, you sit in the investing council.
Oh yes, so you're used to these high profile personalities.
Yeah, and in the investing council, I think it was chaired by Judge Edwin Cameron.
Yeah,
and then we had Saki Makozoma as a deputy chair of council.
So it's already
and many other prominent academics and everything as this. So exposure to that space wasn't
shocking.
So the student activism I'd done with too much confidence.
It looks like it. Yeah. I find student activists quite confident very early on. Even your youth leader, who you drew from within the EFF, who you drew from university, has a similar energy. And they're very articulate and all of that.
Yeah. Then when I went to COSATU, so now I'm a student activist. I've been exposed to these boardrooms and all of those other things.
Yeah.
And then I work as policy head for the SACP. But at the core of the work that we do is to conduct political schools for the COSATU affiliates. So for NEHAU, for SATU, for the National Union of Mine Workers, for all the affiliate unions. And there was a time they said I must go and do a political school of the NUM in the Northwest.
The mine.
Yeah. And I went to a town called Orkney. I'd never knew there's a place called Orkney. Yeah.
When you're traveling towards Kimberley.
Yes. Yeah. And for the whole week. And now we must talk to workers about the National Democratic Revolution and what is capitalism, what is Marxism, and how does it relate to the struggles of the workers and everything else there. I'm saying that transition was the most important because it then disabused me from the academic language of the universities. Now we must
tone down.
You must now be clear. You must now talk to people clearly that the National Democratic Revolution is aimed at achievement of all Freedom Charter objectives, but it's for the creation of a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, prosperous society. Yes. All of those things there that we used to do.
The words are less bigger.
Yeah. But you must then be able to explain clearly that what is the nationalist character of the NDR and all of those things. What is democratic about it? What is a revolution?
Wow.
All of those. So
did you find that your audience was absorbing?
Yeah. Yeah. In many instances, we got to. So I did way too many political schools.
Let's talk about something that troubles me, and we spoke about it before we started recording, the understanding of concepts by most South Africans.
Yeah.
And I think it's a deliberate design of apartheid for us to be removed from better knowledge, which we have to pursue it on our own for us to achieve anything. But the education system deliberately created an environment where you will only know so much and not enough.
Yeah.
What do you think right now, 2024, is the result of that creation that happened during apartheid, where South Africans were deliberately taught only so much?
Basics, yeah. But I think the wave is like gradually changing. It is not to where it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Getting better?
Yeah, it's getting better. Yeah. Like there's beginning to be appreciation of just what is happening and everything else. So majority of the people are not longer just the passive recipients of what is fed to them.
Slogans.
Slogans and all of those things. They are questioning. During these elections, the ANC is facing a tough time, because people are asking questions that, no, but you have promised these things before.
You can't keep saying the same thing.
You can't keep on saying, Also, you can't threaten us about social grants and everything else.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was interacting with some guys, when you go to these traditional gatherings, you sit under the tree. So some guy says that, we're going to support the EFF because even this 350 which Ramaphosa is giving us, you receive it by 8 o'clock, by 10 o'clock it's finished.
It's too little.
It's time. He says, no, wow. 8 o'clock you receive the 350, by 10 finished.
You want
yeah. And he says, no, this thing is not happening. Like, we need a different. Yeah.
So you
our people are becoming much more conscious. But I guess also is due to the whole generational shifts as well, that more younger people are getting much more conscious as well.
However,
and that is our path to power, by the way. I'll explain how.
Of course, but however, actually you'll explain immediately after this question. However, there's still a challenge of participation.
Yeah.
Even yesterday's Citizen spoke about 64% of registered voters are expressing lack of interest.
I'm not a big proponent, or I'm not too worried about the rate of participation in the electoral.
You think it'll be decent?
No, I think it's decent even now.
Okay.
Yeah. Those who participate, they represent the majority. They are proper pulse of just what the entirety of society is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However,
so don't be mistaken that because sometimes even pulling back and saying I'm no longer going to participate, sometimes it's to endorse the status quo because you've given up, like in terms of the whole issue. But those who participate are a proper reflection of those of everyone else. So we must never be ever concerned that no, it's 18. There's the highest number which of people who voted in South Africa, by the way, was in 1994 at 19 million.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now,
in the last elections, it was way more than that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
but still lower than the complete percentage.
Yes.
Obviously.
So I think that they represent the pulse of the entire society.
However,
I'll tell you why. Like, if accept these partisan and political party-funded polls or business-funded polls. And everything.
You think they're politically funded?
Yeah, those ones of the DA, they do that every day. Like, and Brenters, the Oppenheimers, they do those things. They want to feel good and everything. They think it's an instrument of propaganda as well.
It maybe works in other countries.
Yeah. It doesn't have impact here. But the proper scientific polls, like Ipsos majority of the times, has released almost exact polls. And they sampled 3,000 people. So if 3,000 people can give you the pulse of the whole country,
then 22 million.
Then 17, 18 million.
Yeah.
It's a decent number, like, to tell you what the society is thinking. And of course, we must encourage as many people as possible to participate in the democratic process.
That's my point.
That is, we should get as many people as possible. But those who are participating thus far represent everyone else. And that is why you can't question the legitimacy of a democratically elected government or democratically...
Even if it's voted by 10% of the population.
Like, it's
still...
it represents the everyone else.
Yeah.
The only problem will be when there is closure of the space to participate in the electoral politics. And there isn't in South Africa now. Everyone else is allowed to participate. And let's hope that 24 will have a higher turnout. But the results will not be significantly shifted as to what we know is going to happen.
You wanted to tell us about how your ground forces will be participating.
No, look, the very fact that we are present in all the VDs, and then we start preparing for 29 May and all the logistics are in place, and then we've spoken to people.
Early.
Yeah. And then we have spoken to a lot of people. And then some call them, some will fetch them, some will mobilize them, or remind them that today is the day. And then we go and cast our votes in numbers. And we will come up with something. One thing which I know is that the EFF is going to be government nationally and in many provinces.
You'll have a minister.
Not
or
even,
two?
no,
Or a president?
that is an understatement.
Am I
It's a
pitching you
radical.
too low?
That is way
I
too low.
apologize.
That is way too low.
You'll have a president.
We are going to have a president. Like once we have, there's no outright winner. Ramaphosa must tell us why must he be a president. And why should the ANC feel Ramaphosa to be president when they didn't?
He may not call you though.
Who
he
is
may call somebody else.
Like what? The DA.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Right? The ANC will not have an alliance with the DA, and the dynamic about that is largely due to the generational issues as well. Yeah, like majority of the ANC provinces are led by our generation.
Okay.
Yeah, by people whom we conducted induction workshops of
before you left.
Yeah, before we left. And also from a political alliances point of view, I don't see the ANC aligning with the DA. Of course, these old people, they are going to advocate for that because majority of them are in the pockets of the establishment. Like Thabo Mbeki is a direct beneficiary of the Stellenbosch business empire because his wife is a shareholder in RMB. RMB is part of the Remgro empire and the Open. This guy, the Ruperts and all of those things there. Same with the former president Motlanthe. Same with the metal power sides. He is always begging for access to the main table. All those so-called veterans are being fed by South Africa's white capitalist establishment. So those ones, all of them are going to say, please go and work with the DA because it safeguards their private interests. But the younger generation will not do that. So, and their voice, the voice of the younger generation, our generation, will be much more significant. I don't see a lot of them agreeing to vote with the DA in their provinces, even if there can be some wrong or foolish National Executive Committee decision to work with the DA. I don't see a lot of them agreeing to that. But also, I don't see the Oppenheimers agreeing to their puppet, the political party, the DA, working with the ANC. I think they've got different aspirations. Of course, they are very afraid of the EFF.
Yeah.
If anything, the Oppenheimers, they don't want the EFF next to any guy.
Why are they afraid? I had a conversation with
it's understandable
with the leader of the DA, and she very clearly said, "We will never."
Yeah. No, it's understandable.
But you have given them power in Tshwane when they got it for the first time.
I'll give you the context of what happened.
Give us now.
Yeah.
Might as well, so we don't forget.
I'll tell you why they are scared of the EFF. It's because we represent through revolution and through change. And this is what happens with the white capitalist racist establishment everywhere. Whenever you demand for equality, they think you're calling for their oppression.
Okay.
Yeah, everywhere. Like whenever you say
they feel like they're going to lose something.
Yes. And the EFF's agenda is going to uproot white supremacy and white domination in the economy. They know that. And it's unapologetic about that. That is what they're fearful of. And they know that we are not about to compromise. So, of course, if they know that we're going to uproot their undue dominance over South Africa's economy and therefore society, they therefore are possibly correct to characterize us as the enemy number one.
To be fearful.
And then they are fearful, and we are not going to tiptoe around that, and we're not going to change. We're not going to assure white people that we're not going to uproot their white domination and economic undue dominance. We are going to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that one, they must be. And we are unapologetic about it.
CAC came out saying we will not chase them to the ocean.
Yeah, we're not chasing them to the ocean.
Yeah.
We're just going to undo their economic domination because it happened due to colonialism and apartheid and racism. We're not going to chase anyone to the ocean. We are going to undo the economic domination by white people because it is gained through the barbaric colonial system and apartheid. That is what we're exactly going to do.
Show me.
Give me
one example of how. Give me one example.
So it's if we nationalize the mines, for instance, it means that the core or the foundation of Oppenheimer's wealth is going to be eroded
immediately.
Yeah. If we create a state-owned bank, right, it means that this RMB, which has pocketed Zanele Mbeki and all of them so that they can control Thabo Mbeki, will not have any relevance because the state-owned bank will be the most critical role player in South Africa's society in terms of vehicle finances, mortgage, and all of those things. But currently, I've got an RMB with their subsidiary called West Bank, which puts up a billboard and say, 9 out of every 10 cars you see on the streets are financed by us. Like, and then no one says anything about it. Not even the Competition Commission says anything.
They're celebrating their achievements.
But how do you justify that? Like, where monopoly is even saying, we're monopolistic like that.
We are good at what we do.
No, that even through capitalist laws and regulations is not permissible.
Yeah.
Even under capitalist laws of neoliberalism, they always say there must be institutions that regulate competition. But those ones are uncharted. No one is questioning them about anything because they've got access to political power. So the policies that we're going to introduce ourselves are going to systematically and systemically uproot the white domination over the economy in terms of what is required. And that will mean that a lot of black people benefit much more meaningfully from South Africa's economic activities. That is what is going to happen. But also our approach to land expropriation without compensation, which is saying, let us do what the People's Republic of China is doing, what Mozambique is doing, of having the state as a custodian of all of South Africa's land. It will literally displace them from the undue economic benefits and strength which they've gained through colonialism.
Will you be willing to pay fair price for nationalizing a mine, for example? Because it doesn't belong to South Africa, it belongs to capital?
I don't think the nationalization of mines will be the most complex one because remember, since the enactment of the Minerals and Petroleum Resources Development Act, which is the law that governs all South Africa's minerals and petroleum resources, South African government is a custodian of all of South Africa's minerals and all petroleum resources, the gas, the oil, which is in the Mossel Bay and all these other areas. We are custodian of all of that.
But you're not
towards
beneficiary.
We're not beneficiating.
Yeah.
So towards that, I mean, like, we can start doing our own things. Like, before we even tap into the ownership of the shafts which were brought by Lon Min into Marikana and everything else there, we can start going into the PGMs, like the platinum group metals, and extract them ourselves, benefit them domestically. And but also we can start to utilize the laws. Like the law, by the way, is in the MPRDA says the minister who is responsible for mineral and petroleum resources can determine the quantum of minerals that can be exported out of South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can put quotas that and you don't need a new law to do that. The law already provides for such power. You can issue a communique that 60% of all the minerals that are coming out of South Africa's soil must be beneficiated domestically. Yeah. And that is how, and then you have a state-owned mining company which will play a role in all the critical and strategic minerals, inclusive of coal, by the way. Like, we should continue to play a much more important role in the coal extraction and generation of electricity.
And exporting of it.
Even exporting.
Because it's leaving, most of it leaves the country.
We can earn huge revenue. Like, it can be a huge revenue base for the state as well, even when we export, because the exporting is still continuing now. And why is the state? I mean, they say our coal reserves can last us 400 years plus. Why are we not rich as South Africa? Like,
we have platinum, gold, and diamonds.
Why are we not wealthy as South Africa with so many minerals?
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense. Like But you've got these guys who are just giving licenses, and then the people who are involved in the extraction of these minerals, they even dupe the government. They make them fools. They bloat the expenses, and then they engage in profit shifting, which erodes the base upon which taxes were supposed to be collected to benefit everyone. So it's one of the things which it doesn't make sense.
Interesting. My research of nationalizing of to state-owned companies, you find a lot of it in Australia. You find a lot of it in the US. Some even say 2008, when banks were saved by government in the US, in some small way, is nationalizing of those resources.
The logic of having state-owned mega companies and institutions is because they can invest in long-term projects and programs which are not about immediate profit making, which are about development of the productive forces, about development of the economy as a whole. That is the logic that, by the way, led to China developing faster than any other nation has ever developed in the history of humanity. So China, once they got the proper ideological and political instruments
in the 70s,
in the late 70s, then they said, we actually can develop the productive forces faster than it could happen under capitalism. So this Fortune magazine annually releases the global 500 of the top 500 companies in terms of revenue and in terms of employment and in terms of impact, the global impact. Do you know the Chinese the country as a whole has got more than 100 companies in the global 500 now.
Jeez.
And all of those are state-owned companies. Like proper state-owned mega, which are involved in shipbuilding and a variety of things in energy and all of those. And they won't easily falter because they are focused on the development of the Chinese economy in a much more meaningful way. And so here in South Africa, if we were to truly develop our productive forces, we need the state to play a far much more cogent and central role.
What do you say to the idea, it's not an idea, it's a reality, that state fails to run the very few companies that they have now? Denel is gone, if it is still there at all.
No,
the post office has got its own problems, and we can carry on. You know these examples very well.
It's a reductionist observation.
Okay.
If you were to gauge the number of private companies that are being deregistered and companies that are being closed every day.
But we don't compare.
So no, it's in comparison, right?
But why do we want to compare?
It's so because there is that idea that because Denel had difficulties, therefore state ownership must be altogether.
But it's not only Denel.
No, so there's context, by the way, as to what happens with state-owned companies in South Africa. So there is no clear strategic guidance that is given to state-owned companies. Like Denel, for instance, right? Why, with the huge experience and industrial capacity and history and to manufacture armaments and even military vehicles, why haven't we established a civilian component of Denel to manufacture automobiles?
Yeah. You tell me.
You
probably close.
So that is what we're going to do differently. Actually, part of the immediate mandates what we're going to give to Denel when we take over after the 29th of May will be to have civilian vehicles that are made in South Africa fully, manufactured in South Africa fully. Not assembled.
We have the capacity.
We have got the capacity.
Yeah.
We must have vehicles that are made in South Africa fully. And those are going to be utilized. First, the primary off-taker will be the state, because the state is the single biggest owner of automobiles, of cars. Just how many police vans are out there in the streets? How many cars are owned by municipalities?
Yeah.
How many refuse removal trucks do you need? How many ambulances do you need? How many scholar transport taxis and buses do you need? And by the way, even if you were to manufacture or to build 30,000 cars in one factory per year, you can employ a lot of people. Like a belt to manufacture 30,000 cars can be massive. And then you start with state off-take, and then later on you go to even compete with everyone else and sell to
the rest of the world.
To the rest of the world as well, to say that this is. And because you have been manufacturing military vehicles that must drive in war zones. Majority of our landscape here is like war zones. In any way, there are no proper roads. Like, the potholes, they make it very difficult for cars to drive. You might as well manufacture the police vans to be resistant to potholes.
And bullets.
Even, everything. And bullets as well. Like, so that you are able to play a far much more. Because this thing that we of African ancestry can't manufacture or produce anything sophisticated is out of order. Like, the rest of the world is caught up. In the beginning, it was only the Europeans which were doing the cars,
the Germans,
and then the Japanese came,
with Toyota,
the Chinese came. Now India came as well. Now
Mahindra,
very aggressively, yes, and very aggressively. And Tata even bought.
They bought. What did they buy? A big brand.
Yeah, the Ranger.
Yes.
But they are massive. Like, why is it that we of African ancestry do not have a car which we make by ourselves? Like, anywhere, like not in the African continent, only even in the Caribbean islands, in Jamaica, in Haiti, in Guyana, in Barbados, in all of those areas, wherever there's people of African ancestry, we are not manufacturing anything. I think that has to change. Like, but we should purposefully pursue that.
I don't want us to dismiss the statement that says, but government in South Africa has struggled to run companies successfully.
Not by the way, not holistically. It can be correctly said that all the state-owned companies. Of course, there are those. They are extremely brilliant South Africans. Like, a lot of them who were pushed off the line, who can play a very important role, and every time they ran the institutions which they ran, those were successful. When Siyabonga Gama was the CEO of Transnet, it made profits of upward of 6 billion rands. And listen to Siyabonga Gama about Transnet, you'll get to learn a lot.
We should invite him here.
Yeah. And when Brian Molefe was running both Transnet and Eskom, they were stable. He had no load shedding. It's a fact. And he grew in the beginning the PIC from the hundreds billions to more than $1 trillion asset management company. Brian Molefe. Then Machila, despite all these things that they're saying about him, right? He's the most accomplished asset manager in the entire African continent, actually, even globally competitive, because there is privately owned asset management companies here in South Africa, but none of them came anywhere close to the PIC when Dan Machila was the CEO of the Public Investment Corporation. Sipho Maseko ran a partially state-owned telecom. But he was declaring dividends to the state, upward of 3 billion rands, like, to the state. And these are people, by the way, who are now not active in any role in state-owned companies and in society as a whole. Like, they're not being used when they've got the massive skills. Instead, they're being witch hunted for wrong reasons. And those are people, by the way, unapologetically, whom, when we participate and we take government, we're going to require services of, because they have demonstrated beyond doubt that they can play a far much more meaningful role as to what happens. So the state can run state companies far much more efficiently. It just needs proper strategic guidance and leadership by the political leadership that is overseeing such institutions. But you have got Praveen, who has got evil intentions. Like,
what do you mean?
Like, he doesn't believe in state ownership of anything. Like, he literally destroyed Transnet.
So
he destroyed SAA.
All these things
like,
are deliberate.
Yeah, he destroyed SAA. I mean, like, with SAA, look, the DG of the Director General, who is the implementing authority, like, who is the accounting authority of public
CEO.
enterprises. Yeah. He says this minister goes to the extent of unlawfully appointing people to buy SAA for 57 rand, which is not worth 57 rand. And it's not even his purview of expertise or responsibility. Duties. But he's doing everything else to sell this thing for their own purposes. And there's no one who even sits back to conceptualize what is the role of an airline? Is it to make profit? No.
To carry a flag.
It's to carry a flag, but also you can drive huge tourism out of that. Like, I mean, at the turning point of the Emirates and Dubai and everything else there, is their airlines. Like, they go all out to even put that Emirates on the
football teams.
In Europe and everywhere. Like, they sponsor a lot of programs because that is at the center of their economy. Like, the tourism that gets to go there is way too much. There are so many tourism opportunities in South Africa. So if we had South African Airways flag flying all over, and then we create the same vibe and excitement with what was achieved by a state-owned Fly Emirates, by the way. We could achieve a lot, like here in South Africa, through the airline. But you've got someone who wanted to sell it to people who do not have any strategic value addition.
And they didn't even have the money.
Yeah, they didn't have the money. They didn't have any value addition as well into the airline. And so the problems of state-owned companies is mostly the political leadership and guidance that is provided.
But what is the problem? Because based on what you're saying, all this is a deliberate act. But with what end in mind? How do you destroy things that are doing well?
I think they mostly want to please their masters. Like,
but how do you destroy? For example,
they want to please their masters.
Eskom,
like, I can tell you, do you know when we do immediately after government participation in government, when we do the forensic inquiry into just who composited the consortium which was taking SAA, I can tell you now you're going to find Remgro there.
You think so?
I know so.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you that you're going to find components of Remgro, but they didn't want to be at the forefront of it. So the individuals who were put at the forefront of it have got some relationship with Remgro. And Remgro wants to literally take everything else that is of strategic value. And then that is what but we will find out very soon.
I like how you say once we get into government.
We're going to find out. Yeah, we're going to find out as to just what happened. And then if there's consequences, they must accrue to those who took wrong decisions. Yeah.
You have been the coalition between the ANC, because that's where we were talking about ANC.
Yeah.
And then actually we deviated slightly because we were talking about your participation in the DA politics at some point.
No, so what we did in 2016, a very correct decision was that when there were no outright winners in several municipalities in South Africa, we took a decision to vote for mayors that do not come from the ANC, for governments actually that do not come from the ANC.
An anti-ANC act?
Yeah, like, look, and remember 2016, the EFF is 3 years old.
At that time,
3-year-old organization. But then also, in society, there is still also this lingering doubt that, is this really an organization or it's an attempt to try to go back to the ANC? Right? Like, a lot of people legitimately are saying that 3 years and then you face an election where you must take a decision, and then the first decision you take is to reinforce the ANC.
Okay.
So
doesn't make sense.
It was not going to make any sense at all. So we took a very correct decision that we are not an appendage of the ANC. We are an autonomous organization that takes its own decisions. We can take decisions which are even detrimental to the ANC's immediate or even long-term interest, because we're an autonomous organization. We know what we're standing for.
But then we vote to DA.
I'll give you the exact context. But we then voted for mayors and governments which came outside of the ANC. And coincidentally, in the city of Johannesburg and Nelson Mandela Bay in the city of Tshwane, the DA was the one who was fielding the mayor candidate. But in Tabazimbi, it was the Tabazimbi Residents Association.
Okay.
We voted for a Tabazimbi Residents Association mayor who supported as the EFF. In Metsimahulu, in Sasolburg, Zamdela, we voted for a mayor from Metsimahulu Residents Association.
Okay.
So, and in many other areas as well where there was hung municipalities, we took a decision to support non-ANC government. And then, but because we were at the center of that political change, our voice was very, very, very strong. Yes. Like this thing which Herman Mashaba talks about of insourcing, we are the ones who told him to insource. Because when the budget in Johannesburg, yes, it came as a motion.
Credit for that, though.
No, he's just taking chances. Like there's records of that. We are the ones who tabled the motion on insourcing and told him that this budget, there was no insourcing in the DA manifesto. There was a budget which had to be passed then, and we say that this budget is not going to be passed unless there is insourcing of security guards and of cleaners and all of those. It's an EFF motion. In all the municipalities where such happened was due to the EFF. Even the issue of mobile clinics and polyclinics that had to be taken to informal settlements, it's the EFF motion. Also, the motion that got to say in the city of Johannesburg that JOSCO, which is the Johannesburg Social Housing Company, should now play a role in student accommodation. It was an EFF motion, like that there is a crisis of student accommodation in Johannesburg. So as the city, we need to play a role. And almost all of those, they got to be passed because of the ideological guidance of the EFF. And we guided on a lot of things. And I mean, Herman, obviously...
Was he your guy? Because he carried that little burden, so to speak, that you're an EFF guy.
No, we everything else that we said he acceded to.
Okay.
So we guided him on virtually everything else. I'm responsible in the Economic Freedom Fighters for governance. I chair a committee called the Governance Task Unit. So I can tell you, like, on many instances where we gave him direction and directives of what must happen. I remember there was a time he wanted to appoint Mark Moriarty.
Okay.
Mark Moriarty is the chairperson of the Democratic Alliance here in Gauteng. I don't know if he still is. He wanted to appoint him as a COO of the city of Johannesburg. And then he called and said, no, Mark Moriarty is very good and what. You could see it was a head of development of the DA. And I said to him that, the day Mark Moriarty starts there in the city of Johannesburg is the day you are finishing. Same day.
Yes.
It's the day you are leaving. There's no Mark Moriarty who is going to be COO of the city of Johannesburg. And already they had promised him. Yeah. And we stopped that.
Jeez.
But he personally wanted to bring Mark Moriarty as a COO of Johannesburg, and we stopped it.
Wasn't he conflicted though? Because he had to, in some small way, deal with two masters.
He didn't have two masters. He later on got to appreciate that the EFF is at the center of the power which he had there.
Yeah.
And the DA realized that. That is why Helen Zille says that Herman Mashaba had gone to account elsewhere. So they were going to surrender him, by the way.
Oh, yes. So he left before he was fired.
Yeah, they were going to surrender him to a motion of no confidence, which was going to humiliate him. That is why he jumped before.
Yeah.
And then the establishment realized that he can be a useful instrument in their hands. And then they teamed him up with that white guy.
To start a new formation.
But also that formation is not autonomous. It's controlled by the Oppenheimers fully.
Wow.
Fully.
Action SA.
Yes. I know this because...
I'm about to ask. I'm tempted to ask. How do you know this? Because you're saying with such confidence.
They are given money by the Oppenheimers and are told what to do, even on local dynamics. Do you know?
Yeah.
I sat with the highest authority in Action SA is Herman Mashaba and that Michael Bowman guy. Right? I sat with them in their offices. We even met at Herman Mashaba's residence. They
were hoping it would be private meetings, but look at you telling us.
But it was not private meetings because we actually had written out a statement, a joint statement about it, right? And then we had a common approach, by the way, to the 2021 local government elections negotiations. That is why...
As I say, Action SA and EFF.
And EFF, yeah. That is why Herman Mashaba is on record. They said, everywhere the EFF goes, I'm with the EFF.
But he's not now.
Yeah, because I'll tell you what then happened. Right? he went to television to say, no, this is wherever the EFF goes, I'm going with the EFF. He was singing praises, and, like waxing lyrical about the EFF's integrity, which is true, but he had not consulted with the handlers as to what happened. We then wrote a memorandum of understanding with them that we're negotiating together. Now, whoever comes, they will find us together. In the early hours afterward, now we're supposed to issue our statement. We're supposed to issue the next day. The Oppenheimers instructed them to issue a statement to say that Action SA will never have any relations with the EFF.
So this changed while you were sleeping.
And the statement is issued around 3 in the morning.
Jeez.
3 in the morning. And
when you wake up, the world has changed.
Everything else has changed. And these people was sitting with, these are the decision makers.
Didn't you and I asked this very simply, pick up a phone and say what happened?
No, because that time Makosi Koza was still part of them. So she had formed part of the
Yes, that stint.
Yeah. She had formed part of the negotiations. Then we called her and then she says that, hey, it looks like there is power elsewhere than
the power you thought you meant.
Yeah. There's instruction from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Also, remember what she said even when she left that thing of Action SA. She said, there's no organization there. It's puppets of people who are controlled elsewhere. But so it's a waste of time to talk to her, man.
But it seemed like at some point you believed the power rested with them for you to even make time to meet with them.
No, it was very strategic for us because remember our proposal after the 2021 local government elections was that we should negotiate a situation where we can have Herman as a mayor of Johannesburg, and then we'll have an EFF mayor in Tshwane, and then we can have a mayor, maybe even from the ANC, if the ANC comes to the party, in Ekurhuleni. That was our approach in terms of how this was supposed to be composited.
That's not what happened.
No, it never happened like that.
Yeah.
We had discussions with the ANC. The ANC was very arrogant and they also didn't want to have a policy discussion as to just what should happen. Then we voted for the minority mayors again to say that we're not beholden to you. If you don't want to discuss principal issues, you might as well get out. Then they got out.
Is it true you gave ANC very high demands that were almost impossible to achieve?
No.
Yeah.
But those demands of the EFF were made public. Like we did say that if you want to talk to us, we must talk to principal issues as well. Because there was a process of the parliamentary inquiry on the whole issue of the land expropriation without compensation. We say that there's a policy issue here which coincidentally is our conference resolutions. Ours is a founding manifesto commitment. In your part, you have agreed in your own conference to expropriate land without compensation.
So let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Let's have a clear framework to introduce free education. Let's drop the stem from the national anthem. We engaged openly with them. Then
which one was the most difficult? Because it seems like they're obvious these things.
No, they said everything is difficult. They said everything is difficult.
Are you not difficult with the stem? And I asked this, let me hear your perspective. Are you not saying, as a united front, South Africa has agreed to bring everyone together in a... And you're saying, remove this.
We is united.
It's
whites and black people.
Whites and black people.
Those things were fictions. There was a farce. But also, how do you take the song of your oppressors, which was used to celebrate
Rainbow Nation?
Murder? No.
You know where we're from.
No.
It was a Rainbow Nation ambition.
Those things are absolute rubbish. Those things which those people did in Kodesa are absolute rubbish. If anything that we want to reverse ourselves is those Kodesa agreements. They were sell-out positions in terms of how they got to construct this democratic project. So, I mean, like Mandela, that is why, if there was really meaningful achievement that was brought by Mandela, it was going to be a factor every day. It's only white people who are celebrating Mandela now. Black people even forget that there's Mandela. But all the youth, they don't even associate with him.
Yeah.
Like, because there's nothing which really we can say is the father of the nation, he brought us freedom and all of those things. Because those things that they've agreed to in CODESA were absolute rubbish.
The Mandela era, highly celebrated all over the world.
Yes.
And you seem to question not necessarily the era, but what happened before the 27th of April, the conversations that led to the free country that we got. What are some of your fundamental issues with that?
No, there's a lot of strategic retreats on mostly economic policy issues. So the liberation movement, mostly the ANC, capitulated to the demands of domestic and global capitalists as well as to what should happen, what should constitute a new South Africa. Mostly it was to say, guys, just take political power, the economy we're going to continue to control. And some coincidentally, I wrote my master's adverts about the economic policy discussions and deliberations in the period 1990-1994.
So you've had to engage this.
Yeah. So, yeah. And it's not fiction, actually. Like, we illustrate even in the master's thesis that Mandela was having a recurrent meeting with Harry Oppenheimer to talk about the economic policies of South Africa. So as part of my research project, I interviewed Bobby Gottsel, who was part of the Oppenheimer empire, and I also interviewed a guy called Clem Santa.
And they were frank.
No, they were frank that we used to meet. We said, no, those were actually very useful discussions because we used to meet with Sir Harry Oppenheimer and Nelson Mandela, and we work into details of how the economy should look like and everything else there. So it was actually a very good thing that we did. And remember, like, the Oppenheimers, like through Clem Santa had said in 1987 that in the ultimate end, negotiations must work, rhetoric must be dropped, and we must continue to do business as usual. And that is what they got to achieve ultimately. And to show the basic illustration of how there was a sellout position on the economy, it's the composition of President Mandela's cabinet, right? The Minister of Land was Cruyff van Niekerk from the apartheid government. The Minister of Minerals was Pik Botha.
Government of National Unity.
No, but
they had to bring guys in.
That's fine.
You're saying
no,
look
unity.
at the positions.
No. And then the Minister of Finance was Derek Keys.
Yes.
And was succeeded by Limbenberg as well, like from Nedbank, was forwarded from Nedbank. And then they had the deputy president of de Klerk and obviously Thabo. But they safeguarded the economic sectors because once you say minerals, land, and the minerals component also include the petroleum resources, and then finance, what are you left with? Like, you're left with labor, sports and labor. See, you're a minister of labor.
Yes.
Like
and health.
And you can't, and you're not doing anything.
What did we have
like,
health? Who did we have health?
Like
anyway.
Like I think health was Nkosaza.
Nkosaza, that's the era where cigarettes had the advertising ended. Yes.
But the key economic sectors were led by the same people. And once they were sure that our agenda is solid here, it won't be disturbed, they allowed black people to continue play the puppet role which they had already designed. So the CODESA outcomes are nowhere close to revolutionary, and that is why majority of black people remain poor. That is why South Africa is the most unequal society in the world. It actually did apartheid in terms of levels of inequality. Apartheid, where legislation was making it unlawful for black people to own economic sectors, it's outdone by the so-called democratic state in terms of the extent of inequalities, because white people just got richer and black people got poorer. And the gap is way too much. And there is no creation of a black bourgeoisie or capitalist class.
One can say that there is a rise in middle class that happened since 94. And mostly, obviously, it's amongst black people.
It's underwhelming rise, actually. It's an underwhelming rise. I mean, like, if we're to, maybe we're going to talk about China now.
We have to.
I mean, if you were to check what is the rise of the middle class is, it has to be more than 50% of the population if you want to talk about significant changes. Like China, correctly, including the UN development program, like UNDP, and the United Nations acknowledge the fact that China is responsible for poverty reduction, of global poverty reduction at 70% of the poverty reduced, because it took more than 700 million out of absolute poverty. So, and the creation of more than 400 million middle class. You know, when you've got 400 million middle class component, it's people with disposable income and buying power.
True.
That is a huge economic base. I don't think South Africa we are anywhere close to that. The numbers are nowhere close to satisfactory. That is why we're not a significant market for anything.
What made you want to study another master's?
I did a research proposal first here in South Africa for a PhD.
Okay.
And so, you know, in South Africa, the manner in which the research proposals are done is that you do a research proposal, you go and defend it in front of academics, and then they give you a go-ahead to write the PhD.
I'm going through that.
Yes.
I haven't mind. I'm still in the process of putting it together.
Yeah, and then you write, then you submit. So the Vet School of Governance said, I'd already defended mine.
Okay, your submission.
Yeah, and I was going to write about the nature of South African capitalism as well. Like, it was going to be very interesting. That was inspired by Frederick Engel's PhD, which was the conditions of the working class in England. So I was like, okay, let's write something about. Then in the process of writing, I actually wrote a lot, right? Then I was like, I think I need more practical experience, one with the politics of South Africa, but also with government, to could contribute something much more meaningful as a PhD. Like, I think it's too early to could write a PhD, because PhD must be addition to knowledge. It must be out of practical observation of what have you learned in society, in practice. Like, if you're going to write about industrial policy and everything else, then you should have been able to say, this is what I've guided in relation to industrial policy and all of those. So I was like, it's premature to could pursue that route. Then I was like, let me then choose to do a master's program to strengthen
your
ambitions. My ambitions later on to do a PhD. But then the criteria for me was that I must do a master's in one of the top 10 universities in the world.
I saw that. I was about to ask, why choose University of London?
So I had actually I had said, like, whichever department that I had said, because I was like, let's test if these theories that we have and ideas that we have can be tested at a far much larger scale and everything else. But also, I was thinking that, you know, the PhD which I defended was with the Vets Governance School. I was like, to have 4 degrees from one university is not...
Okay, or you wanted to widen your scope.
Then during the COVID period, what then happened was that I then decided that I'm going to enroll for a master's program. Then I said, before I do that, let me enroll for a 3-month short course. Then I enrolled with the London School of Economics first for a 3-month short course.
Somebody lied and said they got a PhD at London School of
Economics. One of the board members, yeah. So that I did a short course like for 3 months. And then the average which I got was 79.2% like of the course on globalization and the global economy and politics. And then I gained some confidence. I was like, this thing is not very difficult. LSE is raven about a lot, and let me then go mainstream. Then I enrolled for the Masters of Science in International Development from SOAS Development Studies School. So, you know, the University of London It's a very huge university. There's got upward of 200,000 students.
Oh.
But then within the University of London, they've got semi-autonomous schools and departments.
SOAS being one of them.
Yeah, SOAS being one of them. London School of Economics is one of them as well.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of prominent universities within the university.
Wow.
I think, by the way, we should model that maybe for one of the universities, either Wits University or University of Johannesburg in South Africa, where
you find that though with Gordon, what is it, Gibbs?
I think we must make it far much bigger. I think we must have the quantitative expansion of VETS or UJ to go 100,000 plus students, and then
with smaller universities within.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that we create a farm. I don't understand why we have not by now turned the entire Braamfontein, Auckland Park
into a student.
Yeah, into a research and academic city.
Yeah.
Or suburb, or where,
because it's moving that way on its own.
Yes. and then what we do as well there, we then remove the fences into universities so that we can have truly open education, such that if you are staying around there, even if you are not enrolled into a class, you can say, let me attend the course on sociology, like just one lecture, but you must pre-inform the university that I just want to learn this component, and then I go. I'm not enrolled, but just allow me. We must have open universities like that. By and large, by the way, there are no real strong fences there in the University of London complex.
Yes, so you can just...
Wow. There's no access control. Where are you going? Who are you going to see? No.
How did you do it practically? Were you there a lot?
No. So they have got extremely advanced online education systems where you attend classes and put on your laptop and you must be physically there. They verify that it's you. Even when you're writing exams, you can write exam, they open one page where you're writing only, right? First, they must survey where you are, that there is nothing else there.
Okay, wow.
And then the question comes as and when you answer them, right?
Okay.
You dare lower the screen, it's gone forever. You will never. If you lower the screen, from once it opens there, it's gone forever. You will not be able to write because they will think that you're now copying and everything.
Oh.
Yeah. They've got very strong, highly advanced online education systems.
Yeah.
So I did coursework. I did 3 courses, and then I did a research paper. And the coursework was not easy.
What was it? What were the courses?
The course I did was called the Sociology and Politics of Global Economy.
Okay.
The other one was called Understanding Poverty. There's a huge course on understanding poverty, which is actually very insightful. It actually reveals that most of the poverty measurements that we use in South Africa are problematic. We just use monetary components without looking into the multi-dimensional expressions of poverty. And then I did a course on economics, politics, and society in East Asia.
Are they prerequisites a part of the master's in science degree, or they were separate from that? Are they part of the?
Yeah, it's part of the. Yeah, it's part of the MSc.
Yeah.
The reason why they call it Master of Science is because they know that they've trained you. You can have some scientific value out of what, but it was not easy. It was very difficult.
It always looks easy when it's done.
Yeah. Do you know there's an assignment which a lot of people got to drop out from the program because of they said during COVID, towards the end of COVID, they say, can you please write 8,000 words of analyzing the incidents of COVID and the responses of the governments of the following countries, which you don't choose yourself.
Okay.
Let's say Ghana, Germany, Mexico. I think the last one was Nicaragua, right? And then the 3 don't have English literature.
Where do you start?
Yeah, you where do I get information about Germany and Mexico? And I had to look for translation services and apps and everything else there to be able to.
That can help you.
Yeah. A lot of people stopped. They said that you're taking us too far now.
Do you find?
And then, but I was able to enjoy. But at some stage I was like, it is worth it.
I was about to ask, did you find at some point you wanted to give up like others?
Yeah, at some stage I was like, hey, this is and remember I start this coursework and everything as during the COVID lockdowns, right? So that time I've got maximal time and everything else. But then the program is not a year, it's 2 years.
Okay.
Then the reopening happens. Like of the country.
Now you have to work.
Now I must, yeah. There was a sauna debate where I think one of the saunas, I was submitting an assignment. I had to literally bring a laptop from outside when they were presenting.
You were submitting during sauna in Parliament?
Yeah. Even when I submitted the final dissertation, I was actually in Kigali, in Rwanda, attending the Interparliamentary Union's assembly. Like,
how did you manage though to make time?
I work differently, like myself. Like, so I work at night. Like I work in the evening. Like I start at 12 in the evening, and I push until 4 or 5 in the morning, where there is no disturbances of phone calls and all of those.
Complete silence.
Yeah. Complete silence.
You may have noticed I send you something. In the morning.
That is how I operate. So So many people will see that things that I've written, but they've never seen me typing anything on a laptop. So
I was about to ask, when do you do it?
So I do, and then the other thing as well, which was very difficult during winter, is that I'm unable to write under a roof.
Okay, explain.
I must see the sky everywhere I write. I must have to sit outside. Yeah.
So you work outside?
Yeah, if it's a place, there must be a balcony or there must be
What led to that? What is that?
I don't know. Like, I can't. Like, I become extremely jittery and panicky when...
What?
It's a close-off place. Yeah.
I wonder where it comes from. So you have to be outside under a tree.
Like, I must see the sky, yeah.
That's strange.
To the extent that when it's cold, right, I rather put heaters around there.
Outside?
Yeah, because I can't be able to...
That's very different.
Yeah, I need the sky all the time.
Yeah.
I desperately, I don't know what causes that.
Let's talk about the research. It's an interesting one. Tell us, what is it? What did you research?
So I did, my dissertation was on examining whether China's economic roles in the African continent represents neocolonialism. Yeah, so if you were to just check, there's so many observations, mostly by the Western media, mostly driven by the Americans. Even some of African scholars, they always say China is the new colonizer of Africa.
That we've heard before.
Yeah. So that is the question which I said this must be examined in terms of what should happen. And then I chose to use Ethiopia as a case study because Ethiopia has had a very successful relationship with the People's Republic of China economically. And I don't know why mainstream media and even economic journals are not talking about Ethiopia's economic growth, because Ethiopia's economy has grown average of 10% for the past 15 years. In a huge way.
When I read that, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Because exactly that, we don't know.
Yeah. And Ethiopia has been able to maximally and optimally benefit out of its relationship with China. And there's no natural resources in China, so there can't be even a supposition of colonization in terms of what happens there. Then did a closer survey, but at a theoretical level, I had to, of course, then deal with what is neocolonialism and what are the contemporary manifestations of colonialism in South Africa or in the entire African continent. And I think that is what actually got me to be given the marks that I was given.
Did you score well?
I got 77%.
Wow.
Yes. Because I then said that there are different manifestations of colonialism in the current conjuncture. That one is, of course, the continued theft of natural resources, like the extraction of natural resources. 2 is the depriving of the former colonies' policies of sovereignty in terms of which decisions they take in relation to the economy in terms of energy policy. So you see it applies a lot to...
So the former colonies still have a role.
Yeah,
they're still doing something.
But also that the other feature as well is that the colonizing instruments are no longer just countries. It's also multinational institutions and corporations. Like the World Bank and the IMF are colonizing instruments now. Like,
in what way? Through aid?
Through aid and debt conditionalities. Of
course, yes. You speak quite a lot about that.
Yes.
About debt.
Yes.
As being a problem within...
Yeah, actually, I think that I actually started by quoting Thomas Sankara, who says that the new colonialism will come in the form of debt. Like, and he had observed that. Like, then, so... The debt conditionalities compliance is used as a instrument of colonialism. Like where they say, we're going to borrow you money, but this is what you're going to do. Like you're just a colonial administrator. Like you change everything.
Jeez.
Like everything, your policies, everything else, even the language that you use. Sometimes they even write for you the economic policies and turnaround strategies and which areas to focus on and all of those things, health policy, education policy, because they control that. But then I also argue very strongly that another form of the manifestation of colonialism is this thing of tax-based erosion as well and profit shifting.
Explain.
That in Parliament, as we have before made submissions around profit shifting and illicit financial flows and tax-based evasion. So this is what happens, is that most of these multinational corporations, like I'll give you an example with Lonmin, right?
Okay.
They come and get a mining license here in South Africa to extract the platinum group metals, the PGMs, right? And then, so they are expected to pay tax out of the profit that they make. Like if you say your total annual turnover is 100 billion and then the profit is 40 billion, right? The state is eligible or is entitled to a percentage of the 40 billion.
Of the 40 billion, yeah.
In terms of what happens. So then these ones who are operating in all parts of the African continent, even here in South Africa, they bloat their expenses and then they don't make profit.
So reduce their profit.
Yeah. So it's called profit shifting.
Of course.
Yeah. They shift
common business practice.
Yeah. So what they do, they bloat expenses and then, but the way they do it is that they create fictional professional services. Then they say, this is a marketing service. This is an advisory service. It cost us 2.5 billion rands. To have this. And those things are their companies, by the way. It's not even an external service provider. It's them.
So money moves from here to there.
Yeah, they shift profit so that they do not pay taxes. So that happens in the entire African continent, where the entire continent is robbed of its wealth through profit shifting. So I actually illustrate that is another form of colonialism in the manner in which it is. Because neo-colonialism is colonialism just in a different conjunct.
It's new colonialism.
Yeah.
And it's a different form of...
Yeah.
It's not the
time period.
It's not the type that has a gun and that takes your land and changes your culture. Wow, it's an interesting one. But you speak of mutual benefit within the China-Ethiopia relation as part of your findings.
Yes. Then
But can it be really proven that the relationship is mutually beneficial? And I think this. Hear me out here.
Yeah.
If you and I are planning to go on a trip.
Yes.
And I have the car and the petrol, and you have nothing.
Yes.
Clearly, the power is shifted in my favor. I'm the one that determines where we're going.
No, to understand China's role in the African continent, right, is one, it must not be understood just within the contemporary activities that it is involved in. I write about that to say that the first major project which the Chinese government got to implement in the African continent was the Tanzania-Zambia Railway Authority, TAZARA. Like, so under Mao Zedong, the Communist Party of China and the PRC, the People's Republic of China, so after the liberation of Zambia and Tanzania, before the liberation, by the way, like the proper independence of Zimbabwe, then Mao Zedong, Chairman Mao Zedong, like from the Communist Party of China, then they said, we want to help you, the Zambians, to gain access to global trade, right? Then Kenneth Kaunda says that I don't have infrastructure to globally trade because I'm landlocked, and my neighbors, this side is South Africa, which is closer to the ocean, and this side is Zimbabwe, which is Rhodesia, which is under Ian Smith. Then the Chinese said, we're going to build you a rail project which will move from Zambia to Tanzania. And then they built a 1,860 kilometers rail project. You know, like 1,800 kilometers is way too much.
It's across South Africa.
Yeah. Like the whole, like, and it's still operational, by the way, now. I actually even got to go to Dar es Salaam to go to the Tazara railway station.
Wow.
There's even plugs there that are showing in the opening of the project. Also, even the current General Secretary of the Communist Party of China visited to check that program and everything else. So the first major infrastructure program to be invested by the Chinese in the African continent was the Tazara Rail project, which had huge economic value.
But for what benefit to the Chinese?
They did not benefit anything out of it. It was to consolidate their friendship with the African continent as part of the anti-imperialist forces. And that, I believe, that was the case because there is no value which you can say China benefits or benefited from Tazara. Like, but it eased the movements inside Tanzania, inside Zambia as well. And then in relation to Ethiopia, so Ethiopia has attracted a lot of Chinese investments. Close to 70% of those investments are in manufacturing, by the way. Like labor absorptive manufacturing. They've got their own
in Ethiopia.
Yes.
Okay.
And then so Ethiopia is, is a landlocked country as well. The neighboring country to Ethiopia is Djibouti. The Chinese want to build a rail project from Addis Ababa to Djibouti, to the port of Djibouti, which is like 80% utilized by the Ethiopians for export of finished goods and products.
Jeez.
Textile, shoes, and everything, clothing, everything that they get to make in Ethiopia, like in partnership with a lot of Chinese investors, but also that is utilized by other investors from the West, from Europe, from America, and other areas, and even inward industrialization that got to happen there. So there is, and outside of the rail project, which is like 700 kilometers upward, from Addis Ababa to Djibouti, there is also many other investment projects which are happening in Ethiopia, which are anchored by the Chinese government. One of those is hydroelectric power stations. You know, this hydroelectricity is when you get a huge flowing river and then you stop it, you put the machines, when the water comes, it then propels that machine to generate electricity. That is the simplest way to
generate power.
It's the simplest way to explain a hydroelectric power. They are building mega power stations. Even the kilometers of roads that were built, proper infrastructure through the cooperation with the Chinese is quite significant. And by the way, that is not the only area where such has happened. In Tanzania now, like there's a bridge there which, there's a bridge which moves from Dar es Salaam to a place called Kigamboni.
Okay.
Right? So there was a huge river there which was dividing the communities, and the people were using ferries before. And the Chinese helped with the building of a bridge. I think it's called Julius Nyerere Bridge now. I went to see that bridge as well in Tanzania. And here in Mozambique, this Katembe Maputo Bridge, it was dividing the components of Mozambique that comes to Kosi Bay and to Mhlabalingana area and part of Maputo. Massive project which got to happen. Then all these economic activities, I want to literally pay attention to each and every one of them to say, are there colonial intentions in terms of this? And what is colonialism about it? They realize that there actually isn't any hidden agenda. Majority of times where the Chinese get to borrow money to African governments, when they realize they objectively cannot pay, they write them off. And this is proven by research done by professors from the West. Like there's a professor, a female professor who has been a specialist on China's Africa relations called Breton Gam. She illustrates like every little detail that this is the agreement which the Chinese have reached with Burundi, with Zambia, with all these countries. Angola. Angola is the biggest recipients, by the way, of Chinese infrastructure aid and assistance. But there's never been any period where the Chinese will dictate as to what should happen domestically in Angola or what should be their policy on healthcare, on everything else there. So that is basically what we're looking into. And then the other areas which they're investing in is Kenya as well. Like between Mombasa and Nairobi, there's a long standard gauge rail project which was built with the assistance of the Chinese. Then the issue which would then argue in the dissertation is that instead of having these multiple projects which are built with Chinese state-owned companies, assistance and cooperation, the African continent need to consolidate a common engagement framework with China.
Okay.
Yeah. We need to build one like integrated rail project to improve
cuts across.
Yeah, it cuts across.
Yeah.
To improve our inter-African trade relations and everything else. For the movement of goods and people, it will be far much easier to do that. But also, the electricity investments must be integrated, all of it, including transmission lines. Like we must be able to provide electricity to the entire continent because currently the numbers are saying upward of 60% of the continent is still not electrified. We still, if not 70%, we're still a dark continent. And China has got a massive capacity to generate electricity from literally everything. From the water, from the wind, from the sun, from everything, from coal as well, from everything, from nuclear. Like why we should be having now, like I know in the Agenda 2063 of the African Union, they talk about the rail project, but we should be having a plan now on integration of all the transmission lines of electricity in the African continent in terms of how we should handle that. So the research gave tremendous insight.
I can tell you have a lot of references. But is there...
And tremendous insight as to just what has been happening in each and every country. And by the way, there is a lot of audiovisual illustrations and discussions about China's activities in the continent. And of course, there are instances where you find private investors from China, like small scale mostly, who go to a town in Burundi or in Uganda and then start a small factory and then they engage in the abuse of workers. And then
there's a recent story, Nigeria, where a shop or a mall or whether it's a supermarket that only wants to serve the Chinese community. And so the Nigerian authorities decided to shut it down.
Yeah, so you've got those instances of rogue elements who are not acting on behalf of the Chinese government.
Yeah,
who are, but the intentions of of China in the continent they're proper. And I'll tell you, you see that the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, Xi Jinping, like is the president
of the country,
right? He actually is building on what Mao Zedong did, because after Mao, China's interest in the African continent declined a bit. Of course, they were doing the internal reconstruction.
Fix themselves.
Deng Xiaoping and all of those things of the growing the economy, opening up the global economy, relations with the West and all of those things they had paid little attention to. But currently China is, after Xi Jinping's ascendance to power, is Africa's biggest trading partner, like collectively. But they are also our biggest trading partner as South Africa as well.
I was about to come to that.
But we have not yet fully...
because you wrote another paper that speaks to South Africa. However, before I get there, I want to because your research speaks to this one small question. Is there enough evidence, enough empirical evidence that solidifies China's intention as not being neo-colonial in nature?
It's plenty, yes, there is.
Yeah.
Like, there is plenty evidence.
That says there's no ill intention.
This is plenty.
This is just people that are helping other people.
Yeah, there is plenty. They've got, of course, economic interest, right? But there is plenty that they never dictate the domestic politics and direction and everything. They never interfere. Like
it's interesting though.
Like you will never get any form of interference, like zero.
It's never been found.
Yeah.
Throughout the African continent.
Not only in the African continent, everywhere, wherever they do business.
Yeah. But what is at the heart of their intention?
I mean, like, they do business with like literally everyone. Even with capitalist countries, if there's a trade relation that they must have with them, they do business. Like, I mean, like, but when the Communist Party of China meets, when Xi Jinping speaks, even in state platforms, he says that we're a Marxist-Leninist country. We are led by a communist party. The People's Liberation Army of China belongs to the Communist Party of China. Like, and its role is to protect the state and to protect the people of China. But he has never gone to say, for us to relate with you as South Africa or as Uganda or as Tanzania, you must first ascribe to Marxism-Leninism. Never. But these ones from the West, they will tell you what to wear, how to walk, how to talk, what to say, and everything else that they, like, literally, and in exchange of nothing.
What mistakes do observers make when it comes to their view of the China-Africa relation? What are they seeing?
I think the other thing which you must always appreciate is that you've got a phenomena of global racism, by the way. And where the West is the main proponent of the racist agenda, which even categorizes all of us in order of importance. Like, do you know Ha Jung-chen? He is now associated with the SOAS, where we got the degree from. Yeah. He actually illustrates that at some point, the West, like these the Europeans, they used to characterize the Chinese and the Koreans in ways worse than they were characterizing Africans.
Really?
Yeah, like they used to be like that, and then so their category was that it's people of Indian descent, and then it's Africans, and then those ones of the Koreans and the Chinese are worse. Like, but look what got to happen later on. Like, the global racism is a reality which is obtaining in the global politics, and I don't know how these leaders don't pick that up. That they are being puppet mastered. I mean, like, very small countries, like, they convene the whole continent. Like, they say France, Africa relations, and then 54 heads of state, they go to France to meet one president. And then I would understand if it's done by China, because China's got a bigger population than the African continent as a whole.
True. As we say, a small country. Yeah, can call all of you.
Yeah, all of you. Like,
come here.
Yeah, and then they even say, no, don't worry, we're going to give you transport. And they put them in a bus. And then they like...
We're exposing our kindness. We are just kind.
Like, no, like...
Don't worry about us. We'll be fine in the bus.
And that is what... we must always say, there's global racism that is obtaining, by the way, and which is still resisting the inevitable rise of China to become the world's biggest economy. And China will become the world's biggest economy. And it is logical that it must be. Because it has got the largest population.
Okay.
Because economic activity must then be larger in a place where there are many people.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. Like,
I hear you.
If you are responsible for like 20% of the global population, you must have at least 20% of the global economy or more if you have got innovative skills to do other things.
Yeah.
You must have more value out of your economy. it can be that the biggest economy is a country whose population is like 5% or 3% of the global population. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So it has to be that is what colonialism is all about, where
The
small nations run
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
So the economic share of the world must be representative and reflective of the population sizes. Not the situation which is obtaining now, where you find the entire economy of the African continent is smaller than some states, by the way, in America. Provinces. Like it
doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Don't we run the risk of creating a dependency syndrome with African countries where we wait to be helped by a bigger brother, which is China in this regard?
No, look, for transitional purposes, right? We need to deepen, widen, and strengthen our economic relations with China, particularly from infrastructure point of view. And then, of course, take critical lessons out of that. Like, as a matter of fact, there is no country, including South Africa, which has got the biggest fiscus in the continent. There's no country in the continent now which has got the fiscal capacity or the financial capacity to build an integrated, real project which can improve Africa's intra-economic cooperation and trade. No one.
No
one can afford it.
You say we don't have deep enough pockets
we don't have,
to do any of these projects.
No, we don't have.
Okay.
And we don't have.
But can't we build it ourselves? Can't we self-determine?
We can self-determine, but we don't have the fiscal, even the technical capacity, by the way, and there's a road which has already been traversed. If we enter into proper concessional agreements, we can be able to have huge and economically beneficial infrastructure projects which will benefit the entire continent. And I think we should pursue that route unashamedly. We should do so. Like the West left us with infrastructure which was only taking our resources to the ocean, and they never got to benefit us with our own intra-African relations. So that path has to be pursued differently. And it's one, and that is why I'm saying that the Ethiopia model is the most powerful model, because if you then attract investments in the manufacturing sector, which are labor absorptive, you then get to expand your economic activities much more meaningfully, because you're not just exporting raw and semi-processed goods and services like South Africa is doing to China now. We can find a way of having a much more meaningful economic benefits out of that. I mean, like, we're part of BRICS with China now. Do you know, even if we're to say, let's have the food economy chain that supplies one province in China, Guangdong. Guangdong has got it's got about 120 million people. It's double the size of South Africa, right? With just basic food implements of plates and spoons and even those sticks which they eat, we manufacture them here. And these things of the glasses for drinking from, and how much economy can you make out of that? Like,
build an entire city.
Yeah. And then the food itself, like, so Africa has got a lot of arable land. China doesn't have arable land for agricultural purposes. Why are we not having the strategic partnerships? And then we also bring proper industry, because one thing which I'm a very strong believer in is that, and because it's logical, is that we can't get out of the poverty that defines all of us as Africans unless if we properly industrialize to catch up with the rest of the world. Everything else that is done in the West, in the East, must be done here in the African continent. We must be able to manufacture even these electronics of the phones and the laptops and the iPads and all of those things, like tablets. We must be able to do all of that. We must be innovative enough to do everything. Household appliances. We can't, as a generation, like, I can tell you now that if, as this generation, we all of us exit without having
left
caught up with the rest of the world, think the coming generations will accept that Africans are just suppliers of cheap and easily disposable labor.
Research by its nature doesn't only look at the positive, it also looks at the negative.
Yeah.
There must have been something you found that could have been problematic in this relationship.
Yeah, the negative thing as well is that issue which I identified, that the China progressively shouldn't be negotiating with these small countries.
Okay.
Yeah,
Explain.
they were supposed to refer them to a common African agenda, like to say, let's use this forum for China's Africa's cooperation, for CAC, right?
Okay.
For mega infrastructure programs. Because these things of talking to us separately, it reinverts colonialism, which Kwame Nkrumah says involves the breaking of otherwise large territories into small, unviable states.
But the states are already separate.
They're already separated. Yeah. But I'm saying, but in the process of that, right? We're supposed to say, yes, Africa, we're going to do business with you. Give us a consolidated project, particularly with rail projects.
Okay.
Like, we know that, because you know that this rail project, they've got the gauges as well. Like, they've got standard gauge railway project that let's agree on the same gauges from Cape to Cairo, right? And then if you agree as South Africa, this is how we're going to build it. This is how we're going to connect it to Zambia, to Malawi, to Mozambique, and all of those other things there. I would think that they were supposed to pursue a pan-continental infrastructure development program instead of talking to us one by one, because we are far away, powerless. I mean, like, if Namibia goes to negotiate with China, Namibia has got like 2-3 million people, and negotiating economically with a country which has got 1.4 billion people, and huge economy. Like, so that is the issue, which, because the West has been maximally utilizing the division of the African continent to worsen our conditions. So I would think that China should take a different approach as well as to how it deals with the continent. But also, that requires consolidated perspective from the continent. But the
continent, and this takes us to the position of the EFF, where the CIC has spoken very strongly about a united Africa. And it's something that he says and he gets argued against very often. And that speaks to the same logic. Africa is not united as it stands. And isn't it a blind assumption that once you say let's unite, everyone will just agree?
No, but look, despite the fact that we are still stratified into these small, unviable economies and states and countries, I think there is a general consensus that we should move towards the common destiny and direction.
But maybe not everyone will agree.
No, I think okay, I'll give you an illustration. Like the Agenda 2063, which was adopted by all African countries, talks to pan-continental infrastructure, like the rail project, and these in African universities, and all of those that interconnect all of us, and energy security and water systems and all of those. But also the ratification of the Africa Free Trade Continental Trade Area.
Okay.
Like by adequate number of countries to make it now to come to effect. It's a step in the right direction, that there's no need to impose tariffs for intra-African trade. What just needs to be guarded now is to make sure that in the process of promoting intra-African trade, African countries build adequate internal capacity to manufacture goods to could freely trade with other African countries. It must not be a gateway where some manufacturer from Vietnam or from China or from Europe brings some goods to Malawi so that they can take them freely to Zambia or to Zimbabwe.
We are just the transport.
Yeah. We need to have internal industrial capacity and manufacturing capacity to trade our own goods and services freely. And that is going to lead to collective prosperity. I think there are steps in the right direction. It just needs to be consolidated. I'm sure if we can have a consolidated framework, even the rail project can be done. Because do you know here in South Africa, for instance, the Chinese are ready to could improve and possibly consolidate a far much more solid rail project, because they've done exceptionally well in the entirety of China currently.
You've written a document or a case for South Africa. Pretty much you've taken your research and made a case for South Africa. In essence, you've removed Ethiopia and replaced it with South Africa, and it wrote another paper. But I remember I read it and I remember thinking, but China is already very present in South Africa. Are you then questioning how deep it is or how expanded it is?
The areas where it's present in could be far much more expanded, and because South Africa hasn't had any mega infrastructure project since 1994, really.
Well, one can talk about the stadiums. Okay. Talk about the stadiums during the World Cup. They're mega projects.
Yeah,
and they happen all at once.
So we need the mega projects. Like,
what is a mega project?
Like, for instance, we need like a new rail. If I can have 1,000-kilometer rail project, like, which is new. A new transport system and everything.
We've had no train.
No.
Are these small?
It will be an insult if you were to gauge as to what are the mega projects in the world now.
I know. If you watch the Chinese mega projects, they're ridiculous.
No, globally, generally, even as compared to other parts of the African continent. Like, if you were to include how trained that it doesn't fit at all. So we need to build a rail project here by either improving the existing rail infrastructure and make it much more efficient and faster, but also to build a proper rail connectivity from the coastal areas to inland, because like the usage of trucks just not sustainable. It doesn't work. It slows down the economy, like, when we can have a far much more efficient rail project. And by the way, you must check publicly that the ambassador of China here in South Africa said that we are ready as China to could build between Durban and Johannesburg a fast rail project for goods and people to remove the trucks off the road. But the Southern government is not willing.
What is the resistance? What have you found?
Part of the remnants of CODESA, by the way, and this is not conspiracy theory, is that in National Treasury, you have got a perpetual resistance to anything that has got to do with China. They always run to the West for any cooperation. Like, they literally mark that must not have anything that has got to do with China in terms of... so that's why, like, the investments of the Chinese in South Africa is mostly on micro projects and everything as they like. Maybe like you've got FAW in the Kuha and Bike and all of those, and some in the mining areas, but not like massive projects where government has appended a signature to say, help us with this public infrastructure.
But is there bigger projects with the West, for example? If you're saying the natural partner is the West.
The West always get involved. I mean, like, they were partially involved with this thing which you were talking about now of how train. Even now with the partial privatization of the ports, the West is going to be involved, like with some of the local partners and everything else. And they don't have that commendable capacity currently in terms of what is needed. So we need to take a different direction. And the good thing about all these, by the way, like even with Medupi and maybe the mega project we can talk about is Medupi and Kusile. The West is highly involved there, by the way, in terms of financing. Check who are the funders of Medupi and Kusile. Like, you will see World Bank there and this European that, and all of those things in terms of Medupi and Kusile power stations. And so we need a different approach, and we can do it in a way that is fiscally neutral, like where we do not touch the budget of the state. We can have concessional loans and agreements as to how do we then deal with this. Or do they build, operate, transfer models where we say, build a rail project for us, 2,500 kilometers. My aspiration is 4,000 kilometers. And then which interconnects the entire country, all the major trading areas. And imagine what you can achieve with that, because you must have the stations as well. Like where people are going to be trading from and all of those things. The number of people you can employ in the construction of that. And it's something miraculous, by the way, which you can check from Tazara to almost all the projects. The Chinese, they can do a 2,000 kilometer rail project in exactly 4 years. I think they've got an internal law that says that within 4 years you must be done.
Yeah.
Like nothing beyond 4 years. Like, so imagine if we were to do that, like here in South Africa, we can literally reboot the economy in a dramatic and huge way, but also get to maximally invest in the manufacturing sector and industrializing, but also have to get value out of it. There are so many areas, the reasons as well, which we get as part of the research is that the reasons why some of the companies, like the manufacturing companies that are relocating to Ethiopia, they were saying like, there isn't as much deeper appetite for manufacturing work now in China, so they're looking for other areas to
Okay. Because the young people in China don't want to work anymore.
It's a huge middle class component which is risen now. Why are we not the recipients of those jobs, like of the manufacturing jobs? Because we're not focused, like, and of course we can only change that with politics when we get to be elected into government.
One would question your opening statement and my last question, where you said we run to the West. We have a small stockpile called BRICS, and we are an important partner in that little union of countries. Are you saying, as South Africa, we are not taking advantage of it, or as the current ruling?
The current. We're not.
But during the Zuma years,
There was an attempt to move much more aggressively when President Zuma was in office. There was an attempt to move much more aggressively to deepen and widen the economic relations with Russia and Brazil and India. But currently, we're not deepening those relations. We're not at all. We are puppet mastered by the West. They control majority of the natural resources sector, by the way. The West control majority, if not all, the natural resources sector of South Africa, like the Anglo this, Anglo that, Lonmin is London mine, by the way, like all of those things. So it's those things that we need to have our own economy. We must, of course, gain full economic sovereignty, but we must form strategic partnerships that do not have neo-colonial aspirations and intentions.
What is, in your take, the long-term 50 years? Because there's a South African government does that, and you speak about it, a 2015 infrastructure plan of sorts. It's there in
like in 20 years, actually, not even 50 years. I think we should have caught up.
We
must catch up. So the whole continent, actually, not just South Africa, we must catch up.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you were to check the progress that was made in China from 1979 this way, building of new cities, like from a desert to a new city altogether, expanding of the rail project
is nothing.
It's nothing. It's nothing. We need to catch up. Like, we must, and only way to catch up is to start having proper industry that is domestically supported, and we can't, as a generation, bequeath to our great-grandchildren nothing. Like, we
have nothing to give them.
No, like, the world must accept that all of us can do all these things that are done, but now we are just consumers, like, and suppliers of cheap and easily disposable labor, and that is applicable everywhere. By the way, even if you were to go to America or to London, like, most people think that America and Black Americans are developed. So if you were to carve out the Black people and then measure developmental status. They're like an African country in America.
Really?
Yeah.
They just happen to be in a different country.
Yeah, they're just so this thing of us of African ancestry being coincidentally very poor everywhere and literally not being part of the mainstream economy must be discontinued. And that requires a courageous generation of politically conscious and inspired leaders.
What country does the EFF envision? What future country? The very country you speak of that will be leaving for our great-grandkids. What country? How does it look like?
Fully developed economically and industrially, fully developed technologically, and everything else there, where there is no unemployment as well, where everyone else has got job, but also is integrated with the entire African continent. We must be able to, like, with the advanced infrastructure, like, you must be able to say, yeah, I'm here in Johannesburg, but let me see, tomorrow let me go to Dar es Salaam. Like, there's something happening there, there's a party there. Dar es Salaam,
there's some event.
Let me go to Kampala, like, and then like from Kampala, I go, like, without much difficulties and everything else. But later on, I'm going to go back to Johannesburg. So it must be easy like that. There's technology, there's infrastructure, there's capacity to could do all of that far much easier.
Yeah,
Europe has done it for themselves, and they are collectively benefiting out of that. China has integrated their country in a far much more dynamic way. It's not very difficult for people to move within China in terms of what is required. We can achieve that economic prosperity as the African continent. We just have to be focused and be disciplined in terms of what we seek to achieve.
What do you say to a position that says African countries should develop themselves individually and over a long period, then come together? Because now you are, let's use black tax as a concept. You are the only one working in the family. And you are now saying, I'm going to look after everyone and let's all live in one house. But you're the only breadwinner. And I'm using a very extreme example, I'm aware.
No, we need to move. We need to rise together. Like, you won't be able, even if you were to think that you're going to develop one country and then the others must, like, later on catch up. You won't even be able to deal with the question of migration properly. You will never solve that. Whether legal or illegal and everything else, you won't be able to deal. So the foolishness that when we say development of the African economy, we are saying that people must just flood to South Africa. It's not a correct reflection. So in the cardinal pillars of the EFF, when you read the founding manifesto of the EFF, it says, let's pursue the development of the African economy, where the economies of the entire continent develop at the same time, so that we do not have a crisis of intra-migration which will not be manageable in one corner of the continent. Because we're convinced that with the plan that we have, we're going to be able to develop South Africa, but we can't do that to the exclusion of the entire continent. Yeah. So we need to, actually, in the founding manifesto of the EFF, it says that Eskom must have the capacity to go and electrify Mozambique, Zambia, Lesotho, so that there is economic activity out of that electricity. That AXA, the airports company South Africa, must go and build the airport infrastructure everywhere else. Like, we must purposefully and intentionally develop the entire continent, not just to, and that will lead to far much bigger prosperity. But also remember, if we are basing our economic development plan and strategy through industrialization here, industrial products and manufactured products need a market.
Someone must buy the product.
So who is going to buy if the entire continent is not developed? There's no economic activity. So we should purposefully invest in that so that there is increased and much more enhanced the economic activity from amongst ourselves. We were talking earlier about Denel manufacturing its own car. Who is going to buy that car if
we're all poor?
We're all poor. Yeah, because we need to develop everyone so that everyone else will be able to buy the car. So we must develop the entire continent. Like, once we have guided each other properly, eliminated in the entire continent this thing of profit shifting and illicit flows, and we have dealt with the terrorism, we have dealt with the theft of natural resources, because there's too much theft of natural resources in the continent. And then we know we've got enough resources here. When we manufacture these cars, here in South Africa through Dinel, the Nigerian government can just come and say that we actually are putting an order for 100,000 cars for all our police stations and military and everything else there. So South Africa must start working on it. But you must have the real infrastructure to take those vehicles today. You must have the infrastructure to do that. And they must be, if needed be, you must have as the capacity to even locally assemble them or manufacture them in Nigeria or in Ghana, everywhere else. So that is what we're talking about of collective prosperity, not this one of isolated approach, which is never going to take us anywhere.
Migration of other Africans into South Africa, an issue that we deal with every day. There's a South African that's watching this that says, David, you can't let him go without talking about this one issue. What is South Africa's misunderstanding of the EFF policy? And maybe start with describing the EFF's policy and what is it that South Africans don't quite get?
So, do you know, I will explain two things. Is that there's our agenda for the development of the African economy as a whole. And then there's a chapter, by the way, in the complementary pillars that says on the migration question. We then say as the EFF that as a human organization, as an organization that is human, like it's Pan-African in character, we can't call for the mistreatment and abuse of immigrants by virtue of them not coming or not being born in South Africa or not having the papers. Because how do you, for instance, say that a person must not be given basic medical care because they do not have a certain document? Like a person is dying and then they say, no, let me search you for a document. Zimbabwe, and not die. Hey, Lesotho, you must die. Like, what absolute rubbish is that? We can't. So we are of the view that whoever is here must be looked after. Like we must regularize everyone into proper documentation. We are not calling for the non-documentation of people. We must document everyone so that we're able to track them if they commit crime and all of those other things there. That one we are not apologetic about. But what we will never do is to say that people must be treated like animals because of documents.
Should they be sent home?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no. The whole thing of deportations is also dehumanizing. It's like you're treating people like animals as well. We cannot do that. There must be a way of creating conditions that they can, if they have to leave, they must leave and everything else, or regularizing them. So that the issue of naturalization must not be very difficult to then deal with. As long as they're law-abiding citizens and all of those who must be easy to naturalize our people into our system. The one of mass deportations is dehumanizing. It's similar to what the colonialists did to our people through slavery, like where they just forcefully, once you forcefully transport people, then you remind us of slavery.
But one can say you're sending them home, you're not sending them to another country.
No. Forceful transportation. How are you sure that they've got a home?
Well, they're not from here. Surely they're from somewhere.
No, but they might be coming from a country which is elsewhere, a territory, right? But how are you sure they've got a home?
When they arrive.
Yeah, how are you sure that they've got a home? Like, because that is a wrong assumption. Like, how are we sure that they've got a home? Because moving from one territory to another doesn't mean that you came from a home.
But South Africans don't.
And we have enough resources in the entire continent, by the way, which can look after all of us properly and sustainably. That is why at the cardinal pillar of the EFF is that let's develop the entire African continent. That will make easier the question of migration. But in the intervening period, we cannot treat migrants in a subhuman way where you deny them access to medication and healthcare and to education as well, where you deny them access to basic necessities that they need. The African continent took care of there's a small number of people who went to exile during the struggle against the fight against apartheid. Actually, most of the African countries even dedicated budgets. And full integration, they were not like isolated. Like they had a budget which was looking after those who were fighting for freedom to happen in South Africa. But to then now say that we don't want anyone here, it will never work like that. That is not our approach.
I want to wrap up, but I want to ask two quick questions.
Yes.
There's talk of you being Minister of Finance should the coalition government happen. What conversation are you having within the party, within the EFF, about possible coalition?
Look, we are going to be government as the EFF after the 29th of May.
So you anticipate an increase in your performance?
Yes, yeah.
Performance.
And then whatever, we're going to have enter into discussions which will end us up in government.
Okay.
And we'll play different roles there. In the national government.
Are they identified roles?
The first one, which one is President of the Republic. So we want to make President Julius Malema to be the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of South Africa and the head of state. That is the first position that we are looking at.
Yeah.
But also, out of just practical observation and what we have been dealing with, the National Treasury needs different leadership and direction. Like, it's very difficult to talk about objectively, right? Like, if I were to become Minister of Finance, I'll possibly be the most qualified Minister of Finance since 1994.
Tell me why you say that.
Academically, first, but also in terms of experience of the National Treasury sphere. Because of all the parliaments that have been constituted since 1994, I'm the longest serving member of the Standing Committee on Finance, which oversees National Treasury. And the role that we have played in the Standing Committee on Finance has not just been oversight of National Treasury, has been also initiation of legislation.
Example?
And strategic policy positions. So, we did the Banks Act amendment, which then permitted for the state to own a state-owned bank. Like before our introduction of that legislation, government was not allowed to own a bank in terms of Banks Act, but we are the ones who initiated that as the economic freedom fighters, including the South African Reserve Bank Amendment Bill, which was to remove the private shareholders from the South African Reserve Bank so that we can be joining more than 90% of central banks in the world, which are centrally and commonly owned. We initiated that legislation in the Standing Committee on Finance. Even the policy submissions on anti-tax avoidance and anti-profit shifting, very substantial submissions and legislation, which is properly tested, which was made into Parliament. But also even like the submissions that we have made on the transformation of the financial sector, the insurance industry, asset management sector, and all of those. We got to make that much more meaningful. I know, as a matter of fact, because I know the people who are Minister and Deputy Minister of
Treasury,
of National Treasury now, they have no exposure and understanding of National Treasury than we do. Like, I know this for a fact. I know Enoch, like I've known him for a very long time, since when he lived to the house, that he's got very sorry understanding of anything. Yeah, like even David Masondo, like when he was appointed Deputy Minister of Finance, he had to come to ask basic questions as to what is your understanding of this and that and that and that. And we had to take him through induction as well. So in terms of the fitness for the purpose, I don't think that is even a question. Like it doesn't arise. Like and the one thing is that those people in the ANC, they know that we are more than capable to lead National Treasury. Their president knows that, because their president approached us in 2018.
After he became president?
Yes. Part of the discussions which he had with me and the president of the EFF was to specifically say that I must go to National Treasury. Yes. It's not a secret.
In what capacity?
As a deputy minister at that time.
Okay.
And deputy minister of National Treasury, with the roles that I was going to be playing, was far much more influential because chairing the PIC, and that was when 6 years ago, their president of the ANC had said that this one must go to National Treasury.
What do you think of their president, of the president of the ANC, the president of the country?
It doesn't exist. Ramaphosa doesn't exist. He's not honest as well. So he is a puppet of the establishment. So when I'm saying it doesn't exist, it's because, when you talk to a person and then you think you've got an agreement on something and then those things become something radically and different, you must know that that person doesn't exist. He's not himself. He's a puppet of the establishment. But also he doesn't take his work serious. And he doesn't pay any attention to details on anything. Do you know, I saw in one meeting which he called with political party leaders and board of ESCOM, and then some guy was speaking about how the turnaround was going to happen with energy solutions for South Africa, load shedding. And that guy was talking absolute rubbish.
The guy was presenting.
Yeah. But the president didn't know, and I realized that it looks like this head of state and president, which we have, can't even know what is 1,000 megawatts and where it comes from and what it can do to an economy and what is needed now. He has got no clue. None
But he's
whatsoever.
got people to do that.
No, as a head of state, you must know everything. And with detail. Yeah. If you raise your hand to want to lead society and a country, you must have respectable levels of information on everything. Because you'll be misled easily.
True.
Because how do you become a head of state and you don't know what is 1,000 megawatts?
How much capacity does a country need?
Or how much 1,000 megawatts can do, which areas it can electrify. Because someone can come to you and say, hey, President, we need 200 megawatts. But we need 50 billion for that, 200 megawatts. Because you don't know, you will agree.
Yes.
So you must be... And there's a premier of one of the provinces, by the way, who once came to me to show that we've got a crisis, right? The entirety of Gauteng, right, needs 6,000 megawatts, 7,000 megawatts. With 7,000 megawatts, it can be no be load shedding in Gauteng. But to build an infrastructure,
a power station
that can give you 6,000 megawatts can cost you hundreds of billions. I mean, both Kusile and Medupi can produce 6,000 megawatts now, but it's 400 billion rand later. Right? There's a premier of a province, I'll not mention a province, who came to me and said, no, this thing of load shedding, we're done with it. Comrade Floyd, wanted to brief you. I'm going to bring a machine from Finland, which is going to bring us 5,000 megawatts. It's going to arrive next week, next month.
Generate.
Then a premier. Then the first question I said, okay, who were you with in that meeting that agreed to such?
Yeah.
Who were you? Who was there? Who else was there? Then I said, no, you didn't hear
There's
them.
nothing, there's no machine.
I said,
Single machine.
Yeah, I said he didn't hear them properly.
Yeah.
And he genuinely believed it. I'm telling the honest truth. He genuinely believed it.
So you're saying that knowledge is
it's very important. And I can give you several examples of the things these guys say, who are in government, particularly about the solutions for electricity. You'll be so shocked.
Was it a good?
But move? I saw. But what that then concerned me is that you have a president who also has got the same limitations. They present.
Why did we believe in him?
I don't know.
Seems like South Africans believed in the president at some point.
I think the crisis as well, because there was a relative crisis of the Guptas that occurred when President Zuma was in office. And then when they looked around, they thought that President Zuma got vulnerable because he doesn't have money. And then some family from India took advantage of him because he doesn't have personal money. So let's look around for a solution. And then in the process of looking around for solutions, some components in the ANC, then they said Ramaphosa, and then they went to fundraise money from the establishment, and then they bought the ANC conference. And then he got voted in, not because he's Ramaphosa, because the ANC won elections at 57% in 2019. Yeah. So that is what got happened. And that was even in a way a reduction even as compared to the previous elections of 2014. So it happens, but it will come to an end. The only thing which is very difficult, by the way, is that politics, particularly when it comes to subjective issues of leadership, can be very complex. You can be given two options which are all wrong. Yeah. Fundamentally wrong. And you must decide where you go ultimately in terms of. So there was a time where you had the option is Zuma, Ramaphosa, all wrong.
Both wrong.
Yeah.
It's you could say that about American politics now.
Yeah, like where it's
bad options.
Yeah, that is it's like that. And but decision must happen of but Ramaphosa doesn't exist, and he doesn't pay attention to any details. And that is so. I mean, you must check the videos when recently he went to Eskom power station. That guy used to be the chairperson of a war room on energy, right? During that period, he never went to Eskom. He only went now when he's the head of state. His remark was like, those things are very huge. Those power stations. He was shocked. And he doesn't pay attention to detail. He can't, for instance, now tell you about the water systems in South Africa, of where the water comes from, whether we have got a durable supply of water for the next 10, 15 years, 20 years. He can't tell you what is the state of wastewater treatment in South Africa today. And there's a huge crisis that is obtaining at that level. But he's a head of state who is supposed to take care of all of these things. That is why every time there is a major crisis, he says it's sabotage, we caught off guard, I was surprised, and all of those things. He's got no interest in this country. He's just there for selfish purposes.
I want to conclude, but I want to give you, because we're going to flight this just before the elections, I want you to speak to your voters. Speak to
No, look, the most logical thing that the people of South Africa can do now is to give the economic freedom fighters the chance to lead our country. We have the necessary political, ideological, and technical capacity to could provide decisive leadership. There is nothing which the ruling party, the incumbents, will do differently. They're actually not even promising to do anything differently. Their election theme is to continue doing what they've been doing for the past 30 years. And the past 30 years are not worth celebrating because the conditions of our people are not improving. Joblessness, landlessness, hopelessness is the highest. So we need to take a different path. And that can only happen by giving a different generation the responsibility of government. These old people have been given power for many years and they've dismally failed. It's not true that 30 years is not enough to could change the fortunes of this country. We always give example of China. Within 30 years, it had taken more than 500 million people out of absolute poverty and became from number 100th economy in the world to become the second biggest economy in the world. We think it is possible to do so. That is why we have got a political organization which focuses on the economy, the economic freedom fighters. Even our name says that we're focusing on the economy. So all responsible South Africans and people who care about the future of this country and of the continent, they must vote for the economic freedom fighters. Give us a chance. We are not going to disappoint. The good thing about us is that majority of us are still relatively young. We're going to be here. We're not going to hide. We're not going to disappear to anywhere. So you can be able to ask us that these commitments that you have made, where are you? How far have you achieved? So the EFF is the most viable and the most capable option in the current elections. The rest are just the fellow travelers. The EFF is the one.
Travelers.
Yeah, the EFF is the one that has got a clear agenda. That is why we've got the most elaborate practical manifesto as to what we're going to do when we get elected into government. So the EFF option is the best option.
And I want to thank you for reaching out to my small company when you wanted to do improvements to your studio.
Yeah.
So I want to say
thank you very much. Like we actually like it's
useful.
One of the it's very useful. Yeah. I mean like it's very useful. And we actually look very beautiful as the EFF because of your role, the role that you have played. And
thank you
really
very
appreciate
much. Yeah.
No, thank you.
When you reached out, I remember my niece saying, it can't possibly be him. And I said, well, let's respond. And it was you. And we formed a relation since then.
Yeah.
So
and I think these platforms must be expanded and everything as they like. We have had a very long discussion. I was thinking the other time, I was saying to a person the other time that perhaps you must have another podcast which focuses on this academic research and discussions, because there's a lot of PhDs and master's theses that are being produced in South Africa. Just to call whoever is producing that, talk to it.
There's one.
Yeah, yes. Yours. It's a beautiful word. Yeah. It's a beautiful word.
And nothing happened about it since then.
Yeah.
And it's a research on government.
We must talk to all these research papers. Like it will actually get to enlighten the whole of society.
That's
I think
true.
The culture of ideas must be encouraged everywhere else there. So we must have the podcast called Ideas.
There you go. It's Nico Floyd Shivambu.
Thank you
very much. Sure. We enjoyed this thoroughly. It lasted 3 hours, 12 minutes. I'm late for my next appointment, but hey, what do we do? Eh? I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you so much.
King David Studio Podcast.